Captain's Log, June 2nd, 2836. After 27 years of war between the Degen Coomers and the Sainthood Slayers, a new hope arises. As the battlefield lay weaponized, locked and loaded for destruction, negotiations for a peace treaty are in transition. The Moderator has arrived at Station 42. Can this war be ended? Will the Coomers and Slayers find a middle ground?
Abort mission. I repeat, abort mission. Negotiation failure. Abort mission.
Heavy booties, 6+, low orbit, over grid 15-2.
No joy, Yashinman.
Then go to your window and look up their biggest fracking asteroid.
Copy, Yashinman. Still blind. Got some kind of system-wide crash in the defense grid.
Put on trackers up right goddamn now, because we got Boku inbound, and they're not carrying flour.
Wait one, Yashinman.
We don't have flour.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I am Sarah the Raging Tomato, bringing to you live another Moderator Monday. I hope you all had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, but we're going to talk about that freedom and reining it in terms of the prison system. The question this evening is the death penalty is not even a question, it's a statement. The death penalty is a deterrent for crime. I have Marte Reyes. Right? Did you spell that differently? Reyes? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
It's okay.
It's so that way people can say it appropriately. So,
oh, thank you. So I
correct.
have Marte Reyes, Rachel Wilson, the Soy Pill, and Ryan the Radical Coder, all here to bring this wonderful debate to you. Shout out to everyone. And Marte, would you like to begin with your opening statement, please?
Yes. So my opponents here are going to argue that it is not a deterrent. So we all acknowledge that I'm on the pro side with Rachel Wilson here. Michigan abolished capital punishment in 1858. Look at the crime rate in Michigan now. Let's say I commit a crime where an individual was unalived, and then I went on to run. My face is blasted on news media outlets everywhere. The basic knowledge of a punishment for anything is baked into these laws that we have. If I shoplift, I know that there will be retribution. If I kidnap, also retribution. If I kill, the same. We can look at a deterrent of eye for an eye as a deterrent. Jesus Christ was put to the cross. In fact, this was seen as one of the worst ways to perish, not only in ways of agony, but also as a display for the public. This was such a deterrent that they used it as the last stop of a government throwing the kitchen sink at the foundation of a religion to attempt stopping it. The death penalty is a very specific deterrent in one way as well, too, and many, which me and Rachel will lay down. Ted Bundy is no longer raping and taking out children anymore. States like Michigan, which has not had the death penalty since 1858, has one of the highest murder rates. One of the problems we have is you have people in prison who also delete other people in prison. Senator Feinstein, I'll tell you a story, tells a story about her time on parole board, where she had a woman on the stand, not for murder, but for robbery, in fact. She asked, "Why did you use a gun that wasn't loaded?" The defendant said, because I know the death penalty is on the list for California, and I didn't want to do that. We have many cases of robbery in which people used items to rob, which do not cause death and lead to the death penalty or capital punishment. We've seen this in movies, and examples real life where, studios borrow this idea from. So if I can be guaranteed by my opponents that somebody can be locked up for life with absolutely no possibility of release or parole, but I also need an agreement that life without parole does not constitute a violation of the 8th Amendment, maybe you can reconcile this for me. Also, can you prove it's not cruel and unusual punishment? Killers in prison, like I was saying before, kill more in prison than they do when released. You'll have to argue for the release of killers and release of rapists to prevent more killing of staff and inmates behind bars via capital punishment. I need you to go ahead and reconcile this and pick one of those directions as well, too. I'll concede my time.
Thank you, Marte. Rachel, to you.
Hey, everybody. Nice to be here. Hello, Sarah. Hello, panel. Hi, chat. So when we're talking about the death penalty, when we get into like statistics and data, which normally I love, it's not cut and dry. It's not as simple as it can be with other topics, right? Because there's so many factors. It's kind of like a what causes crime debate where both sides can present all kinds of data, but there's so many factors that you can't just nail it down to one thing. So what we have to kind of do is dig a little deeper into it and look at the whole picture, right? So you could take a big, wide historical lens where throughout all of human history, many cultures, probably most, have had some form of the death penalty for most of their existence, at least for some of their existence. Might be a reason for that, but let's just say they're all wrong. They were all just silly. It was just a really misguided thing that all of humanity did for all of history. We can look at places around the world right now, and if you look at the United States versus somewhere like Singapore, it's going to be completely different how the death penalty works. Why? Because the American justice system is this super slow moving, really inefficient machine, right? When we try someone for a serious crime and we put the death penalty on the table here, you have to have a massive preponderance of evidence. That person might get more than one trial if anything goes wrong. They have many chances to appeal the decision. It's long, it's expensive. It's a really difficult thing to do. And a lot of times people sit on death row for a decade or more before they ever get executed, if they do at all. Versus somewhere like Singapore, where the justice system there has an extremely high rate of convictions, arrests. It's very efficient. Its justice is pretty swift, and it's pretty certain there. And they have something called a really, really low corruption perception index, which means the general public there does not see their government as being overly corrupt. People have a lot of faith in their system there. So in a country like Singapore, the death penalty has been an amazing deterrent. They have practically no drug trafficking anymore because they have the death penalty for major drug traffickers. And so what happens is drug traffickers go, this is a really risky market for us. The stakes are super high. There's other places that are better that we can go. We're just going to go there. So in a place like Singapore, great deterrent, has one of the lowest rates of violent crime in the whole world, one of the lowest murder rates in the whole world. Similar situation in Japan, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Oman, places where the justice system is swift and there's pretty good certainty that there will be punishment. It's a great deterrent. In places like the United States or Scandinavian countries where we err on the side of like the rights of the accused and it's this giant, slow moving, sluggish machine, it's not as effective. And there's a lot of variables that go into that. However, I would say, what does all this mean? All this means is that, yes, the death penalty is and can be a very effective deterrent, but it needs the right conditions. It's not going to be effective in all places, in all circumstances. So we'll just have to kind of get into some of the minutia. I'm sure that Soypill and Ryan are going to have a ton of data and stuff to talk about with us too. So that's my opening.
Thank you, Rachel. Soypill to you.
Yeah, can you hear me again? I'm muted.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very sympathetic to killing people. I have not not had crimes. I've had crimes committed against me where I'm like, look, I think this person should die. I think that I have seen people do things to me that I think deserve killing. So I'm not going to come out here and make some soy argument that, killing people is barbaric. I think there are irredeemable people that probably deserve death, but I'm against the death penalty simply on the grounds of practicality. The first is that innocents are inevitably going to be wrapped up on this. I think 1 in 8 people on death row get exonerated only because of the super strenuous legal process. 2, because it's costly, and that super strenuous legal process, which we do to make sure we're killing the right person, which doesn't even always work out. But even when we do this, it's incredibly, incredibly expensive. It is more costly to have all of these judges and trials and appeals than it is to just keep someone in prison for the rest of their life. You can say that we should get rid of these appeals. That's kind of how it is in Singapore or the Philippines. But then you have to see that even more innocents are going to get wrapped up in this. Finally, 3, this doesn't seem to be a good deterrent for crime. In America, at the very least, countries with the death penalty, or counties with the death penalty, still have a higher rate of violent crime than those without it. And intuitively, if everyone knows that by getting arrested, they're going to go to jail and die, they will fight to the death with cops during these arrests. I don't want that. And I will see this. This is obvious. I mean, if this was the actual problem of the debate, like, can it deter anyone? Very much so. Of course, the death penalty can deter people. If you look at Singapore, when you start doing these very draconian laws and you say, well, actually, if you just smoke a little marijuana, we're going to kill you. Yeah, fewer people are probably going to smoke marijuana in that case. However, this is a much more draconian thing, and it's a much lower bar of who we can kill. A lot more innocent people are killed. I value freedom. I value liberty. I don't trust the state to determine whether or not I get to live or die based on some arbitrary drug criteria like that. And I just don't think that's the world we want to live in. So I'm against the death penalty, not because I don't think people deserve to die, but it just doesn't seem like a practical thing to do and maintain all of our freedoms. But I'm looking forward to hearing, from the people who don't necessarily want to look at all the stats. And Marte, we can talk about the Michigan crime rate too.
Thank you, Soy Pill. Ryan, to you.
Right. So the question tonight is simple. Does the death penalty deter crime? Not whether people deserve punishment, not whether some crimes are horrific, just does this policy work? And based on the best data we have, it doesn't seem to. The National Research Council reviewed decades of studies and found no credible evidence that the death penalty reduces homicide. FBI data shows death penalty states consistently have higher murder rates. And when police chiefs were surveyed, less than 1% said that it helps reduce violent crime. Some say it's just used in high crime states, but when states repealed the death penalty, murder rates did not go up. If it worked, we'd see the difference, and we simply don't. Meanwhile, over half of murders in the US go unsolved, so if you think you won't get caught, the punishment doesn't really matter. And many of the worst crimes, mass shootings, family killings, are committed in irrational, desperate, even suicidal states. They're not calculating their sentencing outcomes. So what are we doing? We're spending millions per case, coercing plea deals, and executing innocent people. Since 1976, there have been 1,550 executions and at least 200 exonerations from death row. That's 1 innocent for every 8 executions. Cameron Todd Willingham, Carlos de Luna, Troy Davis, these people were executed despite serious doubts or evidence of their innocence. Even if you want to believe this policy deters, there's no proof at the moment. And what we do have proof is that it kills the wrong people. And we know what works: solving more crimes, funding real defense, investing in prevention. This policy does not deter crime, and it doesn't protect people, and it doesn't belong in a system that calls itself just.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And as a kind reminder to the viewers, audience, and future panelists, we will go through our debate, and then we will read and respond to your super chats and closing statements. And then, of course, as always, we will go into open panel dumpster fire. So get ready to hop on later and voice your opinions as well. Outside of that, I leave the floor open to you.
All right. Well, let's dig into some of this. So Ryan did exactly what I told Marte when we were chatting earlier that I thought he would do. I could have practically said his opening for him. I know you, Ryan. The problem.
Well, you know that I was going to research it, right?
Well, I knew you were going to do surface level research on the United States only, and that's why my opening was tailored to kind of respond to what I knew you were going to say, which is like, sure, in the United States, where we have 50 different states that all have different laws and have, you can have a state like Michigan, like Marte was referencing, where terrible high rates of violent crime and homicide, but only in one city, and the entire rest of the state is nothing like that one city, right? So the United States is a pretty complex huge place. So we have to look at more data. We have to look at longer sets of data. We have to look at extenuating circumstances and the conditions under which the death penalty is being implemented. So why do we see that when we look at the lowest rates of crime around the world, some of the top countries that have the lowest crime, the big ones? Now you can look at like Luxembourg or, these tiny countries that have like 400 people in them. They're going to be the lowest crime rates overall. You'd probably statistically want to take those and throw them out because they're an anomaly. But if you look at like the next two biggest countries that have the lowest rates of murder and violent crime, it would be Singapore and Japan, which both have the death penalty. Then you look at a place like the Philippines, which is highly corrupt, very, very poor, and the death penalty there, not as effective. Why? Because there's so much corruption, because the police there are so corrupt that oftentimes they're the ones dealing the drugs and like helping the murderers and things. So under a system like that, or a system like the United States, yeah, you're probably going to have a hard time proving that the death penalty does much in the way of deterrence. But in a system that's a little swifter, where there's higher trust and there's more integrity in the system itself, people get arrested more quickly, they get convicted at a higher rate. It seems to work great. So I don't know that you just saying the United States isn't a good case, or it doesn't seem to work here under the current conditions, is an argument for whether or not the death penalty is effective overall.
That's a good point, Rachel. Can I read you something from Amnesty International here? This is called Singapore, the Death Penalty, a Hidden Toll of Executions. I don't know if you came across this. It says, despite the use of the death penalty and high execution rates, drug addiction continues to be a problem, particularly among the poorly educated, impoverished, unemployed, and young people from broken homes. According to the website of the Singapore Central Narcotics Bureau, a total of 3,393 drug abusers were arrested in 2002. The number of new drug abusers increased by 16% compared to figures for 2001. The CNB announced that they had seized X amount of kilograms of heroin, X amount of kilograms of cannabis during 2002, and reported a significant increase in the use of methamphetamine. This is despite the fact that the scope of the death penalty was increased in 1998 to introduce a mandatory death sentence for importing, exporting, or trafficking in more than 250 grams of the drug. So it seems, especially in cases where addiction is a problem, people who already think they're going to die from it, it's not deterring them insofar as, let's be clear. If we wanted to say that every crime was punishable by death, it would be very hard pressed for me or Ryan to admit, like, yeah, of course, people are going to maybe hesitate now about stealing a candy bar from 7-Eleven if they think they're going to die as a result of that. But if we look at what actually happens when you practically implement this, especially in the country that you use as an example, this just doesn't seem to be working to the degree that we want. And when it is working, when it's like, hey, we have fewer crime overall, we can look at the crime rate. Well, guess what? We also kill a bunch of innocent people to get that result. And I guess my question to you would be, one, how many innocent people need to die before you're okay with the crime rate being that low? But two, also, what do you have to say about the fact that the drug rate is just going up regardless, because addiction is a sickness that people get, pulled into? It's not like they don't want to quit, but they do it anyway, knowing that they might die as a result.
Well, I'd have a lot to say to all of that. So you saying that drug use is going up doesn't necessarily tell me much. Again, we need more context than that. We need to know, like, are the drug use rates there higher than other places? Are they lower than other places? They might still be really, really low, even though they're going up, right? So,
but and I'm conceding, Rachel. Obviously, I think drug use in general, if you said, if you touch a gram of weed, I will kill you, some people would otherwise, who are not going to do it, are going to not do it. So that's why Sarah, I actually do have a kind of an issue with the prompt of, is it a deterrent for crime, period? Yeah, I think if you death penalty every single crime, of course, it's like impossible to argue against, because people don't want to die, right? Well, the question is this effective? And this does not seem to be effective.
Yeah, I don't love the prompt either, to be fair. And it's not, if I had like my druthers, I would have changed it a little bit. I would have tweaked it a little bit to make it easier for both sides to really get into this. But I mean, no system is going to be perfect. Every system is going to have wrongful convictions. And you could say, well, then, and I used to argue this when I was a young, goofy libertarian. I'd say, well, if one innocent person is being killed, I don't trust the state, blah, blah, blah. However, as I've gotten older and wiser, it's like, okay, there's going to be some people who are going to be wrongfully convicted in any system. And I don't know that, like, locking someone up for the rest of their life in prison is necessarily better. They're both quite terrible. It's a bad situation either way. And I wouldn't be, and I'm not, just to be clear, advocating that we should just be killing people for a gram of weed. I think it should be like only the most heinous and most violent crimes where we just can't risk this person, like Kenneth McDuff, who was a serial killer in the 70s, somehow got paroled and got out and continued his killing spree. Ted Bundy escaped, right, and continued to kill people. Like, there's some people that we just can't take the risk. And like Marte said in his opening, continue to kill and injure people and cause problems even when they're in prison. So like the whole idea
Can I
that,
address your point?
Sorry.
The idea of like which
Sure,
one is worse.
sure.
I mean, if you're not dead, you have the opportunity to appeal your case and potentially prove you're innocent. And death is forever. I mean, unless you believe in an afterlife. But like then that's the whole reason why. Hey, it's better for us to lock them up long term, because maybe if they are innocent, they will actually eventually get exonerated. But if they're dead, they can never do that.
I'm going to ask you a question. So
Yeah,
this
Well,
would
before
be
you
your
do, do you
open
mind if I
statement.
respond to one other
yeah.
thing that was
Can we give
said?
Ryan real
A couple,
quick? Yeah.
a couple of quick
Yeah,
things.
go ahead.
So I know Rachel says, in her younger years, she thought maybe, one innocent death might be, too much, and now she's grown older and wiser. I might be a little sympathetic to that. The idea that only one innocent death might be at times worth. There are casualties in war, right? But we're not talking about one innocent death. We're talking about a rate of about 12%. We're talking about 1 in 8 exonerations. And second of all, to defend the prompt itself, I think even in the case and I might be maybe pushing on Soy a little bit here, but even in the countries where we do see the death penalty being used swiftly and capital punishment being used for maybe much lower level crimes, it's not necessarily you still have to demonstrate that it's the death penalty itself and not just a harsh action on crime that's actually deterring crime. Because if you're telling someone that you're going to kill them for a gram of weed, or you're going to lock them in jail for the rest of their life for a gram of weed, I think both of those are likely to deter crime. So
Ryan, I got a question for you now.
Sorry, I'm finishing. I'm waiting to plan, I promise. Yeah. The burden is, of course, on you guys to demonstrate that it is the death penalty specifically, even in those cases, that is the thing that's deterring crime.
I hear you.
Jump
so
in.
I have a question. I need you to go ahead and reconcile this. Soy Pill went ahead and made this statement in his opening statement. So can you prove that an innocent person was ever put to death?
I think so, yeah. You can show that there's evidence that comes out post-death where like they would have otherwise exonerated them and they get fried. Yeah.
Right. Can
you
I
named some of them. Yeah, Cameron
Okay,
Todd Willingham, Carlos de Luna, Troy Davis. These are all people who were exonerated post.
There's some in this amnesty page that the drug crimes too. Yeah.
Well, that leads me to my next point as far as deterrence, right? This is why we're here on this topic. So if we go ahead and take the death penalty out of one of the things that happens inevitably out of capital punishment is death penalty. We can all agree on that. So a lot of people, they'll argue and say, well, the death penalty is used as a deterrent to argue against release. When somebody is going to be put to death, somebody may say he narrowly avoided the death penalty, right? Giving a deterrent to possible release. If we then take the death penalty away, that's just one more roadblock taken away between a proven killer at times and release to the public. If you take away the death penalty, what will you replace this with?
Life in prison without parole.
Great. So now you're contending with a whole nother can of worms. They're killing more apt to kill people in prison and staff and everybody else. And then you have release.
Right. So, well, hold on.
They're
not getting released. If they're on trial, if they would otherwise be on death row, almost definitely they would be in life in prison without parole. Now, if you want to talk about the dangerous prisons and the conditions that create and the fact that we like fuck with our inmates and say, hey, here's the yard and we're not going to do all these checks and we don't really care if you kill each other. Yeah, I think this is fucked up. And I don't think that we need the death penalty. Hold on. Well, let me finish. I don't think we need the death penalty to fix the conditions that would otherwise fuck with the people inside, the inmates, the guards and all that. I think there's ways to reform that don't involve just killing people that are killers. Again, this is we're going to keep going back and forth on, well, you have to contend with the fact that it is more costly to kill them, that if you don't want to go through this like process of appeals and have them have their own lawyers, which they're the least likely to have their own lawyers, so the state has to pay for that. It's cost us more money. How do you contend with that? Like whether
so you're talking about mitigating cost, right? In prison.
That's part of it. Yeah. But also the fact that I think we can reform prison without getting rid of the death penalty.
We'll meet on that regard as far as mitigating costs, right? We could talk about costs all day, right? Funerals cost money, right? Yep. Having to go ahead and increase security, protect from people that will kill inside cost money because you have to rehire new staff if they die, all these other things. Now you have liabilities increasing too. So there's also costs on that end too. Yep. So you're going to
the costs are more on the death penalty one.
Yep.
What's that?
But like you can analyze these costs if you break it down and see which costs more. It costs more to go through the arduous appeals process to make sure the people that deserve death than it does to just keep them alive forever in prison.
So
Do you
that
think we
actually
should reduce that appeals
that
process,
promotes my
Martin?
argument as expediting the death penalty. I think that
Right.
I can agree with
That
you
is the logical answer, Marte, which is we should get rid of some of these processes, which that is a completely
agree, we
logical
should
argument.
do that,
However,
yes.
then you have to contend with the fact that you're going to be killing more innocent people who do not get as much process to prove their innocence, right?
And the rate is already 12.5%.
So that it still doesn't answer my question with what to replace it with, because you have to replace it with something. I don't think that we can just go ahead and wipe it off the map and just say life in prison all across the board. If you've had somebody that, matter of fact, I'll go ahead and give you an example. So we can all say that home invasions happen all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things happen. We have castle doctrine. You have to protect your life. We have stand your ground in Florida happens, right?
Yep.
So I need you to go ahead and follow this trail of logic. If I stand my ground and protect loved ones, or if somebody is in my home and I walk in and they're raping a minor, things like this can happen. What would you do? Would you say that this is a form of death penalty in immediacy, right? Because what happens is that, would you also agree that the court hands us this right through legislation, through the judicial system, gives us this, voters go ahead and permit this happening through votes. So that way this can become a law, so we can go ahead and immediately enact a death penalty at home.
Yeah, no, we see where you're going. Marte, the difference is if you kill someone in the process of committing a crime, you are stopping them from committing a crime. Once they're in jail, they're not raping your daughter anymore. So you aren't stopping them by killing them. All you're doing is potentially preventing them from being reintegrated into society or just removing them from life completely. And the question is that worth it? Not saying they don't deserve it, by the way. Is that worth it? First of all, it's not worth the cost. It's not worth the fact that we're potentially killing 1 in 8 people every time we do this. And it's just like not clearly working, as the crime rates aren't going lower because of it. But you're right. Yes, killing someone in the moment to stop them from committing a crime, I'm all for that. Someone breaks in your house, you don't know why they're there, you want to blow them away, 100%. But that's not the death penalty. That is stopping the crime in. So
my question is, how is it not the death penalty when we, by extension, by proxy, are given this right through rule of law that's been voted down to our homes that we can go ahead and enact by ourselves, right? How is this any different from a jury that day deliberating? And I'll give you an example of this.
Wait, can I answer right there? You don't have to give the example. I think, let me give an example of why it wouldn't be, right? Let's say someone broke into your home and you don't know why they're there and you blew them away. That's completely legal, right? Because it's like, this person could be trying to hurt me, whatever, right? But the reason it's not the death penalty is because let's say they did that and they stole your TV or whatever, or even, hey, let's say they like rape your daughter, right? And then they're running out of the building and they're a block away and you snipe them. That's not legal. You can't actually do that. And that would be punishing them for that.
That's not actually my hypothetical or anything.
No, that's my hypothetical. What I'm telling you is you would be killing them for the crime they committed. And I might think they deserve death. You're assuming that that's what the situation. I'm talking about a situation where I'm giving a hypothetical. I'm not assuming anything.
Right. Okay, great. What I'm saying is, though, we can have a jury in our own home, and that jury could be a wife deliberating with me. And I'm just saying, like, let's say, no pun intended, I have a soy husband here in this one corner, and then I have a wife, right? They're deliberating, and this guy, of course, you don't want to be with this husband anyways, that says, I don't know, babe, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? Should we kill him? I think it was a crowbar in his hand. I don't know. What do you think? And they deliberate. This guy's a total pussy, right? He and his wife are interchangeable widgets. They have both say, they don't know what to do. That can be that's the form of a jury that happens in America almost every day to some degree, right? We can all say this. There's no difference between this happening on a jury and a jury happening with people deliberating behind closed doors. Now, this is the thing.
There's a big difference, actually. I think there's a pretty major difference in that one is part of a legal structure and one is like in an immediate moment of high energy and high.
I'm going to tie this in real quick. Somebody breaks into the house and they tell you, I'm gonna fucking kill you. They're running towards you with a knife and they have clear intention, and you go ahead and blow them away in the chest. This is plain as day. Your wife is also like the jury in the home, which I've portrayed in this household. She's able to give a testimony, maybe not proof, but evidence, right, of a testimony that's submitted in court. Same thing as a jury. How is that? I need you to tell me what the difference is other than just time.
You're stopping the crime versus the person's not doing the crime anymore, right? It's not the reason that we say that you can blow some away is not because we necessarily say that someone breaking into your house deserves death, because sometimes they don't, right? I don't think necessarily like, look, I want to kill someone who comes in and tries to steal my Xbox, but I don't. If you ask me, just in a hypothetical, it's if someone stole an Xbox,
crime?
Wait, hold on, let me finish, please. It's
ahead.
like I don't think that stealing an Xbox is punishable, should be punishable by death. However, if someone broke into my house to do that and I don't know what they're doing and I blew them away, I think they deserve death for putting me in a situation where I'm at fear for my life and my family, right? But once we know why they're there, once we have that evidence, and once they are not a risk to society because they're in custody, we can't just kill them right away. We have to say, okay, what did you do? Did what you do deserve death? And then we can go on to the death penalty. But that's the difference here, is their immediate moment of you stopping a potential harm to yourself or your family, or a situation where we now are not at harm and we have to decide what to do with this person based on their crime.
I'm not hearing the difference. And here's why I'm not hearing the difference, because I think that deliberation happens, like we could just say spur of the moment, right? Deliberation happens spur of the moment behind courtrooms anyways. Have you ever seen 12 Angry Men? This film could have been like 2 minutes long if they came to a verdict. So it's like all we're talking about is semantics and time.
Well, the point of that movie was that they should deliberate to make sure that kid was innocent and not just choose something and kill him.
Just like a wife coming to me and says, what should we do? Because I think it was a crowbar. No, I don't think it wasn't. Deliberation happens. Let's say this guy takes a while to get in the home. He has to get through 13 locks. Whatever, so that's the thing though. Deliberation happens on one end, deliberation happens on the other. They have to come to an agreement, i.e. death penalty. So if we look at it from one end of the spectrum and the other end of the spectrum, you can say, yes, it's a delayed reaction, but how is it any different when the court says, death? We assume death, right? Then your wife and you coming to agreement saying we assume death at that moment too.
Marte, you proved your own point. You countered your own point, which is in the spur of the moment, we don't have 12 angry men deliberating whether or not this person is innocent breaking into our house. We have no idea why they're there.
One angry wife can equal 12 angry men?
No, this is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying we have no idea why they're there, and that's why we are allowed to kill them, and why I think it should be okay when someone is in your house and putting you at danger. Yeah, blow them the fuck away. But once we know that they're not a danger and we can deliberate behind closed doors and say, all right, let's figure out what this person did. Maybe they weren't trying to kill me. Maybe they were just trying to steal my Xbox. We can't just immediately decide, oh, well, let's kill them in this like short, spur of the moment thing, because that is what our court process is figuring out what this person did and what they deserve. That's why it's completely different.
So breaking an entry is always spur of the moment. Sometimes it's a while, sometimes people stop locations.
Yeah, go ahead and let Ryan add in to respond to what you said.
I think the fundamental difference is that we're talking about like due process, the thing that happens after the fact. And if you are the person who defended yourself in your home, then you are also going to want due process. You're going to want to ensure that you are legally established to have done the right thing in that scenario. We don't want, and if you are someone who maybe like invited someone into your home and then shot them in cold blood, we want to find that out, right? We want to, and again, this is going to be going through due process. So in the big difference is, we're talking about due process. We're not talking about the moment of immediacy, and we don't have to talk about like abolishing the castle doctrine or self-defense laws. We're not making that case at all. What you have to show is that this is actually deterring crime. It has nothing to do with us defending castle doctrine, which again, both of us clearly believe in. So it's kind of a non sequitur.
On your end, the problem that you're going to have to contend with is the problematic point of why the capital punishment is ineffective in America. And Rachel's right as far as other countries. This proves, so you would never argue like a minority can make rules for majority. That's basically what her argument is. So if we go down to what we're talking about, I think that what you're arguing for is a more lengthier process, more money spent through this judicial system to go ahead and finding out people delaying things and saying, all right, I'm going to go ahead and put it off till later, countless injunctions happening in court, things like this. And I agree that everybody should have due process, but there's a microcosm of due process that happens when a husband is arguing with his wife and deliberating too, as well. I think that there's a form of this if we look at it. And of course, I'm going to be pedantic here. We're in the middle of a debate. So all I'm saying though is due process is a matter of speculation and how you see things. Now we talk about, there's judicial due process where there's like paperwork, things like this, but absent this, there's no difference. You know, oh, you could say, well, this happened 20 minutes ago, where this happened now. That's the only difference.
Rob,
Is that what you're saying?
Marte, here's the difference. Let's say I invited you to dinner at my house, and me and my wife were like, hey, let's fucking kill this guy. And we just blow you the fuck away. And then I say, hey, he had a gun. All right. And like that due process is very different from a bunch of investigators coming in, people making their case for and against, investigating whether or not you had a gun, and going through the entire process to figure out, hey, is this guy just a fucking murderer who killed this guy in cold blood? Or did Marte actually run at him with a gun and try to kill him? Like, I think it's a kind of scary that you're not really seeing how effective due process in the judicial system keeps innocent people from going to jail.
Do you not think
when
that happens in a microcosm of houses when there's a break-in happening?
Does, but I would much rather my jury be a judge and, you know, people and like a legal process than two people deciding, you know, in their fucking spur of the moment in their bedroom.
Yeah, they're analogous, but they're not the same.
And I do have a question for you, Marte. I mean, you say like, okay, if we get rid of the death penalty, there isn't a deterrent. But what about the fact that, like you said, these violent criminals now who aren't dead are going to be stabbing people in prison? Is that not a deterrent for other people to not go to jail so they won't get stabbed by the people that didn't get killed on death row?
Well, the thing is, you're trying to eliminate the death penalty in this argument by saying it's ineffective. We'll go ahead and wipe it off the map. I'm not saying that that's the absolute claim that you're making, but what I'm saying is that's the side you're arguing, right? So you have to go ahead and replace it with some functional equivalent or something that's a deterrent, because you've heard of people in cases where they said, well, he narrowly avoided death, right? Well, it's a good thing that was there, because what are the steps to release? That's one step towards release from us letting them.
Could you elaborate? Are these people that were on death row and then get released out of prison? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, this is anybody that's in there for just, you know, murder, right? This is all across the board. What you're doing is you're eliminating a roadblock towards release. And I'm against that. That's another deterrent too, because people can also use that for cases, and they'll say, well, you know what? We want him to spend the rest of his life in prison, but thankfully we have the death penalty to say, at least you got this, right? Absent any of this, now we have parole. Now you have pedos that are out there doing things, and you could make an argument for like rehabilitation, but show me the cases where those guys get rehabilitated. Because I did bring up the case where somebody is raping a minor in your house, right? If something like this is happening, you would agree with me that you'd stop them at the moment. This would be like, you know, full life termination, right? In order to stop that, because another life is scarred.
That's the key point right there, Marte, is I just kill them to stop it. And by the way, if this was my kid, obviously I'd want the death penalty just emotionally, right? But the question is that as what we as a society determine should be having? Well, I don't know about logically whether or not like how this plays out if we start killing all these people. Like if we just kill, you know, this is a completely different argument. Like if we put the death penalty on specific crimes, like which ones are going to be deterred by making the death penalty, and how many innocent people are we locking up? Because I can say, again, this goes back to,
you're going to go ahead and do this. That's it. That's your only argument, is that it's emotional at this
the difference
moment.
Between this is I emotionally, I saw a video of a guy stealing my bike, and I wanted to mutilate this man with my hands, right? But I don't think the punishment for like stealing a bike should be murder, because I don't think a society where we just kill everyone for committing even the slightest of crimes, because stealing a bike, it's bad, but it's not as bad as murdering. I don't think
you're saying now it's not emotional.
No, I'm saying I'm emotional insofar as
you're arguing for it not being emotionally led.
Yeah, I am arguing that our legal system shouldn't be based on how I feel when someone commits a crime against me, especially if it's just like stealing. Even though I want to kill them, I don't think we should kill people who steal just because they stole. I think a society is better because those people do sometimes, are able to be rehabilitated. Now, that's why I say if you've got like a Ted Bundy or some of these examples you bring up where it's like, yeah, this is like a serial rapist, I understand and think that probably these people should die and deserve death. The question is it practical and does it deter crime? Like, and this is something we haven't contended with at all, which is if you look right now, the death penalty is very rare in America, and yet the violent crime rate has been steadily declining for a very long time. And so it seems like without the death penalty, we're going in a very good direction. Why do we need it then? Is there some like counter positive you can show where like, obviously this is what has proved that it works in America, when in the counties that we do implement it, there's higher rates of violent crime?
All right, so I'm gonna contend with this point, but I'm gonna go ahead and move it on to something else, because I can concede that America, we can look at your stats and numbers and things like this. So Ryan, I do want to
these stats.
I want to. What's that?
I'm happy to jump back in too. Sorry, I had to take a very urgent phone call, but let me just interject one thing. Do you guys remember how bad crime was in New York in the 70s and early 80s? And then Rudy Giuliani got elected. And at that time, New York did have the death penalty. And Giuliani was super tough on crime. He basically got rid of the mob and lowered violent crime in New York. Like the likes of which we haven't seen in this country in a long time. So we are bound to the prompt, which is, does the death penalty deter crime? And I would say historically, there's lots of cases where you can say yes. Another one would be post Revolution France.
Wait,
there was
Rachel,
tons
Rachel,
of
I don't mean
chaos.
to interrupt.
Yeah, let's
But
stay on
tell
that
me,
one.
what years was he mayor? Was it 1994 to 2001? Okay, thank you. So go ahead. Sorry,
Also,
I didn't mean to.
do you have evidence
Yeah.
that it was specifically the death penalty that was deterring crime, or were there other factors that played into that? 'Cause I'm sure there's
as I said in my
writing about
opening,
this, right?
there's as I said in my opening, there's always going to be other factors. You can't separate the death penalty from the other factors, and that's why I framed it as it does depend on the situation. So if it's in a situation like New York under Rudy Giuliani, where everybody kind of knew there's swift justice and it's going to come down hard, and they're very serious, right? He had a very tough on crime attitude. He had a very public campaign that he was going to clean up the streets. He's going to get rid of the mob. He's going to get rid of these violent criminals. And there's a death penalty there, and people see that, yes, you're going to get arrested. You're going to go straight to trial. You're probably going to get convicted. Yes, it's very effective in those cases. So another one,
Rachel,
like
if you look at the actual
actual
crime rate in New York from about 1990 to 2005, so the death penalty came back in, I want to say 1994, but during Rudy Giuliani's tenureship, it was on a sharp decline all the way up until 1994. It continued to sharply decline as Rudy Giuliani got into mayorship, and then in 2004 they got rid of it, and it still declined. So the idea that you can somehow attribute this to the death penalty and say the death penalty is the reason why crime goes down, I just don't see that.
I'm
I-
saying
No,
the
that
death
makes sense.
penalty-
Hold
I'm
on,
saying
hold
the
on.
death
Rachel
penalty
was
combined
interrupted.
with
I want to hand it back to her. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm saying that the death penalty combined with these other factors is extremely effective. And we can see it in other, it would be something if it was just one isolated case, you'd say, I don't know how you could correlate that. But like another really popular example, like I said, post-Revolution France, total chaos, craziness in the streets. They start guillotining people and suddenly everybody starts behaving better. Vlad the Impaler, started implementing death penalties and putting people's heads on stakes around the town, and everybody stopped stealing and murdering because it's like, oh shit. The same thing with post-World War II Japan. Very, very tough penalties, swift justice, and the death penalty there too. So it has to be under certain circumstances, but yes, it can be for sure a very effective deterrent. It just isn't a good deterrent when you're kind of waffling about on it and it takes 30 years for you to get executed and you get 7 different appeals. Then no, of course it's not going to be a deterrent. So
Okay, so I don't even necessarily disagree with some of the examples you put in the end there. So I guess my question to you is two-part. One is, what is the least bad crime that you think should be punishable by death? Because I'm arguing that in the state that we're currently have the death penalty, or at least the way it's kind of argued in the Overton window in America, is for like the most horrible serial murderers, right? So if you're saying we should be more like Singapore and we should start killing drug offenders, I want to hear that, if that is what you think. And then we have to contend with how many innocent people are you okay with if we're going to get rid of all these restrictions dying, insofar as this death penalty is going to reduce the crime rate if we start putting it on these very not so heinous crimes, nonviolent drug offenders. How many innocents are you okay with dying to make this crime rate lower? Which I do. Again, we've conceded. If you start saying that every crime is punishable by death, crime will go down, obviously, because people are going to be like, I don't want to fucking steal candy. I'm going to die. But the question is, are you okay with that? Killing people who may or may not have stolen candy? And are you okay with killing innocent people who get accused of stealing candy? Like, that's where we then have to have the debate.
Yeah, I get your question, and I could answer your question, but it would have absolutely no bearing on my position or my argument whatsoever. So like, me saying what things I think should be, what we ought punish by death, what the smallest crime should be, has no bearing on whether or not I'm correct about my position and whether I'm correct about the prompt, right? So, I mean, I could tell you what I think, but my personal opinion on the lowest common denominator of what should be punishable by death has no bearing on my argument, and it has no bearing on
It's more about what are you
your argument
advocating
back to
for?
me.
Well, my argument
I'm not
back to you,
advocating for anything, so I'm going to debate
Rachel,
bro
let me clarify,
I'm going to
right?
debate bro you
No,
here.
I got you.
Can't
I got
get
you.
me with that.
No, I
can't
got
get
you.
me
I
with
got you. You learned it from Andrew. I got you. But the problem is that I'm not contending that
smart lady.
obviously that the debate is not, hey, if we said that we would kill anyone for any crime, would crime go down? That's like so obvious. It's abhorrent. That's like not what we want to talk about here. What we're talking about is what do we ought to do, or at the very least, what is actually practical. The reason we are against the death penalty is because the practical ways in which the American society is trying to implement it is too costly. It kills innocent people, or 1 in 8 people are exonerated who would otherwise have died for no reason, and it just doesn't seem to deter crime here. So are you advocating then for the death penalty to deter crime in the way that Singapore does, in the way that the Philippines does? I think you were against that one. down. Like, what are you actually positively enforcing? Because if your only argument is if we killed everyone for any crime, then crime would go down, the answer is obviously yes, and then we can move on to a more interesting conversation.
Well, I didn't make that claim. I didn't say
we are conceding that, just to be clear. Like,
Yeah,
obviously,
I made
that's
no
I'm
claim.
not actually.
You're not
quite
conceding. Okay, you don't think
conceding
crime
it.
would go down if we killed everyone for every crime? Come on, Ryan.
Well, I think that if I think it, I'm not. I think it would go down if we also said that like any crime at all will be responded to with life in prison, without parole.
True.
I think
we could
I think
move on
they
to that
would
as well.
have similar effects, and I think that given the prompt, the obligation would be on Rachel and Marte to make the case that the death penalty specifically would have a higher impact than just life in parole or life without parole.
Fair enough. Yeah,
I did
especially if we're doing the debate.
Ryan. Okay.
Sure. So I did actually make that argument. My argument was that under the correct circumstances, the death penalty is extremely effective as a deterrent. But if you do it under a system like ours, that's very slow moving, nobody takes it very seriously because it's like, I could get the death penalty, but I'll get like 20 years and 7 appeals. So who really, like criminals don't care much about that. If justice is swift and certain, yes, they do care. They care a lot about that. And it's not on me to like expound on what I think should be punished by death. Could we get into that? Sure. But that would be very stupid of me because that would open me up to all kinds of attacks that I don't need to open myself up to and to actually win the debate.
Bunch of losing
so
points.
it's actually on you
yeah.
guys. It's actually on you guys to prove that the death penalty is not a deterrent. Yes, we took the affirmative, but we don't have to give you any more than just to say, yes, it's effective. And the soy pill already agreed with us. So maybe Ryan can tell me.
Hold on. To be clear, Rachel, I specifically countered your example of Singapore with stats that showed it's not working. And then you said, well, it's multifaceted, but then it is incumbent on you
said it's
to
not
show.
Working. No, you said that use of drug rates is going up. That has nothing to do with whether the death penalty is an effective deterrent. When
the death penalty was implemented, the use of drug rates went up and not down.
To
So
clarify,
either
I believe when she made the claim on the Singapore example, it had to do with drug trafficking, not necessarily drug use.
trafficking has increased as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Actually, the data I was looking at said it's one of the lowest in the world.
Well, I might have lowest in the Rachel, lowest in the world is different from going up from when you implemented the death penalty, which is why you have to prove that the death penalty is a deterrent and not, hey, if we have a lower crime rate here, for example, Japan has very, very rare death penalties and they have very rare crime and they have a very cohesive society that just doesn't commit a crime like in general. So you have to prove the death penalty is the thing that is deterring people and not the fact that it is a society that is already not committing crime.
And additionally, it seems like every time,
I think that we should clean up this one.
Sorry. Additionally, the other factor that you keep bringing up every time you talk about the effectiveness of the death penalty in these societies is you talk about the swiftness and the certainty, which like having swift and certain decisions, this does seem to deter crime, but those don't have to be the death penalty. So again, it's swift and certain punishment is different than capital punishment necessarily. So again, it's on you to make the case that specifically is the thing causing.
You're right about that. But what I'm saying is that of countries that do incorporate capital punishment, if they have a system where the perceived rate of corruption is low and the justice system moves quickly and with what they perceive as certainty, it's extremely effective. We're talking about the countries in the world that have the lowest rates of extremely violent crime, especially murder. Murder is usually the thing you get capital punishment for. And if you look at Japan's another great one. United Arab Emirates, another great one, where people know there that if you get caught, that's it for you. And there's not 7 appeals and there's not 20 years and you can hire a team of lawyers to lawyer your way out of it. It doesn't work that way there. It's extremely effective. How do we know this? Because the rates of the crimes that are punishable by capital punishment in those countries are some of the lowest in the world.
But Rachel, you have to show that's because of the death penalty. Don't you understand that's what you have to prove?
And what you guys have to prove is that it's not. So I can just throw it right back at you. You can try to put me on the defense. So when we can
bring up examples where this clearly gets implemented and
nothing to do with that.
No, can I prove God doesn't exist? Of course not. You have to prove the affirmative case of the death penalty is deterring these people from committing these crimes.
That's actually quite more simple than that. Ryan, I'm going to ask you a question. So if in Qatar, I went ahead and implemented capital punishment for sodomy, right? Do you think there would be more sodomy or less sodomy?
Well, again, I think it's about the swift punishment. So I would say that whether or not you do the death penalty
Regardless,
or life in
do you
prison for
think there would be
sodomy, I
more
think
or less?
both of those would have less.
Okay, great. I just had to ask that. So if the KKK was running around the South back then, do you think there would be more blacks or less blacks running around at night?
There's probably going to be less, but
Thank you.
Got him.
And I think maybe if I can offer some clarification, I believe it would be Soy and Ryan's job to cut holes into the affirmative position. So it is for Marte and Rachel to defend the stance, and then Soy and Ryan, it is your job to kind of break into that. So
yeah.
we're
Right,
So
so
let's
that's,
start
that's
with Japan.
right. So Sarah, that's why I brought up the whole like, hey,
Mhm.
drug rate is increasing in this country. So even when they know for a fact, when I do this drug, if I get caught with this drug, they're gonna fucking kill me. They still do it, and the reason that's not deterring them, even if it was life in prison or like you killing them, both of these things are horrible deterrents. They still do it because despite the horrible punishment that will result in it, they still are addicted. They have some sort of sickness, and they so people who kill people already know like they're fucked after if they get caught. It's not a matter of, oh, I'm going to die or not. It's, hey, I'm going to have a horrible comeuppance for this. And the question is, all right, so if you are in a country where you are giving people the death penalty for this crime and it's going up, then clearly it's not working as intended as you're saying, hey, this is a deterrent, this is making people stop. It's just not. So you'd have
I'm
to show
looking
that
at
it
the data,
was.
but wait a second, because I'm looking at the data and you're misrepresenting it. You're acting as though all crimes are punishable by death. This law was
Well,
enacted
I'm not saying that.
stop. This law was enacted in Singapore to stop opium trafficking specifically. And in the 4 years after they implemented it, opium trafficking dropped by 66%. There was a 15 to 19% point reduction in the likelihood of traffickers bringing in more than 500 grams of cannabis, suggesting a deterrent effect. And now, even if you say, oh, it's gone up a little bit, the use of drugs there has gone up a little bit. We're talking about
20%,
the crime punishable by death, which is drug trafficking. And again, one of the
Well,
lowest
I might
in
be
the
wrong on
world.
this, Rachel.
They
Is
saw-
possession and usage not punishable by death in Singapore?
I don't believe it's usage. It has to be over a certain amount. It targets drug traffickers. We would have to get into like the.
I'll look that up, Ryan. Take over from me because I could be
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah,
I
wanted
will
to poke,
concede that might not be the case.
Yeah, I wanted to
The
poke at
number
the
of
Japan
drug
example.
abusers arrested has halved since the 90s, despite population growth, which the government attributes to its tough policy. So, like,
Okay, wait, Rachel, just to be clear,
Mhm.
the death penalty is for 15. Well, so I don't know. I'm assuming you don't do drugs, but 500 grams of cannabis. That's half a kilo of cannabis, which is not that much, unfortunately.
that's a lot. You're
It
selling
depends.
it.
If
You're probably
you're
not
selling it or
using
you're
it.
hoarding it or you're growing it, right? So this is like anyone in this country. Yeah, if you have a gram, it might not just be killing someone who's like smoking a doobie, but this is like we are killing people for 30 grams of coke. Like that's not an insane amount of coke. So okay, I will concede though, this is not just you did a line, you're going to die. However, the
Right.
drug use is going up, and the drugs are coming from somewhere.
So I have a study here, and
Wait, sorry, I was going to bring up the Japan thing before we go into that.
Yeah,
because you mentioned Japan as an example of death penalty, but my understanding is that Japan only very rarely use a death penalty. It's like only 2 to 3 executions a year, and they're done in secret, sometimes years or decades after sentencing. And there's actually no evidence tying Japan's crime decline to executions either.
Well, that's again another situation where in Japan there's another thing is like the social tolerance for this and the stigma. And part of the reason I think the death penalty is so effective in these types of societies is because it puts a massive stigma on this kind of crime. It's like very not tolerated. They don't do what we do here, which is like, oh, he was raised in poor socioeconomic conditions, so he couldn't help it. He just had to kill people. Blah, 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 blah. We just need to rehab them because rehab rates of violent offenders is extremely low. We've been trying to rehab violent offenders forever in this country. It's been a miserable failure. Everybody knows that. And countries like Japan or Qatar or Oman or the UAE don't fuck around with that shit. Right? So socially, there's a massive intolerance and they're fine with the government prosecuting it. So you probably don't have to kill a lot of people. This is one of the beautiful things about it. If it's a good enough deterrent, you probably don't have to use it that often.
So you think would they not be using capital punishment probably for most violent criminals? If there's only 2 to 3, I assume there's more than 2 to 3 violent murders in Japan per year. But if there's only 2 to 3, there must be a very high bar.
the second lowest murder rate of any large populous country in the world. It's extremely
that's not what
stigmatized
I
to do
asked,
that
right?
here.
They
Yeah, so
also
I'm
have
saying they probably don't
But you
need
think
to.
Wait, I agree
You
with
can
you,
look up
Rachel.
the
It is,
number of murders.
isn't it more the social stigma though than the like? Do you think the death penalty necessarily is informing the social stigma to that degree, or can you show that that's the case?
I
Because
think
when I was in Japan, the social
yes.
stigma of cohesion of like, hey, everyone
Mhm.
clean up after yourself. Hey, don't do crime. Hey,
Yep.
don't walk around with your shirt off. Hey, don't eat while you're walking. Like this is a very widespread cultural thing, and none of those crimes are punishable by death. And I would assume that, I mean, I can't prove this, but it's pretty obviously logically follows that also infringing on the rights of your fellow man by killing them is pretty frowned upon, not because you know you're going to die, but because they're just a very cohesive society that wants to treat each other like, you know, part of a collective.
Yeah.
You'd have to show that,
And that
that
seems to
this
deter-
death penalty
deter
is the
crime.
reason why so few people are committing these crimes, which I just don't see this borne out in the data at all.
Well, this is why in my opening statement, I'm just going to keep repeating this on a loop, I guess. It's all a holistic thing, right? A society that takes crime seriously has the death penalty because they're saying, look, this is how serious we are. You do this kind of stuff, off with your head. We're going to hang you from the rafters. That's it for you. It's the chair, it's the
But it's
gas
like
chair,
Ryan said,
whatever
they
you want
kill
to
like
do.
2 people a year, right? And they still have a
Yeah,
lot. They
and I'm
probably have
saying
more
if
violent murders than they do death penalties,
it's
right?
probably the best proof that it's an effective deterrent to have a society where we do institute the death penalty, but we don't have to use it very often because all of you motherfuckers know that you need to stay in line and that this type of behavior is not tolerated. Whereas if you look at more tolerant societies like the United States and Northern Europe, places where the emphasis is on rights rather than duties, and everybody can kind of get away with murder and you can do all kinds of stuff and you're going to get multiple appeals and you're going to get 20 years sitting on death row and getting, you know, your rights are going to be protected. The downside to that, you can say, well, it's because rights, you know, rights.
Right.
You can
Pesky
say,
right.
yeah,
you
I
think
mean,
people should have less of them? Yeah.
I'm not
So
saying
I have
people
a
should have less of them, but I
Well,
am
you kind of are.
saying that rights without responsibilities and duties attached are extremely bad. It's a bad thing to do to give people only rights and no responsibilities, no duties. And as Soyapil just said, lack of social cohesion, right? Look at the United States. We have riots every damn summer because some idiot, you know,
yeah.
screws up he gets pulled over and starts acting like a fool and gets shot because he's threatening cops. And we tolerate people burning down all of our cities. Why? That's stupid. You would never have that in these countries. And it's more indicative of the overall attitude of just we don't tolerate this kind of upheaval and chaos. And so I think that's why I'm making the argument that it's a holistic thing. It's part and parcel. If you have the death penalty as part of a high trust society that doesn't tolerate nonsense and where justice is swift and certain, it's going to be a very effective deterrent. Now, Ryan, do you have anything to counter that claim?
Ryan, think about it for 10 seconds. I just want to point out that we do have riots in Singapore. There was the 2013 Little India riot. This absolutely happens in these countries with these very strict and social cohesion things. And it's not just because we have rights with no responsibilities. It's because sometimes people get very upset with the state of things. And like this is just going to happen in lots of societies.
Well,
It's kind of
can
a
you give me
silly
the
thing to say.
context of that riot? Can you tell me what that was about?
It's not like I didn't
I'd like
just
to hear.
look it up. I totally understood this before.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a fatal accident that occurred at the junction of a race course and Hampshire Road in Little India, Singapore, causing angry mobs of migrant laborers, probably from Malaysia, to attack the bus involved in emergency vehicles, but then had arrived at the situation. 300 migrant laborers were involved in the riot, which lasted for over 2 hours, and 64 people were injured.
Oh,
62.
2 hours. Look at that. They squash a riot
Sounds
there
pretty
in 2
isolated.
hours instead of letting it go for months, letting it go for the whole damn summer and
Oh,
letting
you're
people.
talking about
I want to
George
push back
Floyd
on
stuff?
the summer
Break
riot
down the
stuff
law
real
and
quick.
everything else.
Because you
Yes.
did say every summer. So we've had
You asked the
very few
question
George Floyd riots
me,
since
right?
2020, but go ahead, Ryan.
I think
Yeah, I
we
just wanted
have
to
them
mention, like,
in-
this is a
in
common
parts of the
tactic
country
that the
every
right
summer.
uses to talk about BLM quote unquote riots. What they're actually talking about is the largest civil rights protests in American history that led to a massive police reforms. And they want to downplay it because they don't want you to protest. They don't want you to go out and protest, police violence, because they know it's effective
Ryan,
and they
are
want
you
to
really
deter
going to
people from
sit
doing
here and
that.
try to
But
defend
besides the
Black
point,
Lives Matter?
besides you can go in a minute. But besides that, I wanted to bring up, countries like Norway, who abolished the death penalty in 1979, and they have an extremely low homicide rate. Iceland abolished it almost 100 years ago in 1928, and they have an even lower. It's one of the safest countries in the world.
Wait. Okay,
Denmark.
let's stop there because
Sure.
you're shotgunning a bunch of shit. Iceland, social cohesion, yes, massive amounts of social cohesion. First of all, a small population,
Agreed.
ethnically homogenous.
Isn't this an argument in our favor, though, Rachel? It's that
No, it's
if you have the
interesting-
social cohesion and no death penalty, it seems to be the very low rate of crime. If anything, this
That
shows
seems to be
that
the cause
it's
of
not a
that.
Because
deterrent;
what-
it's the social
let's
cohesion.
go-
Comprehensive
Wait a
social
minute.
cohesion.
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
Let's go back
holistic.
to my opening. Iceland has a very small population of ethnically homogenous. It's very interesting. You guys could use this in your defense if you wanted to, but I'll crush it for you here. Even though they're mostly secular, they're not a very religious society whatsoever, and they have a lot of egalitarianism. It's very isolated. There's not a bunch of migrants coming in. There's not a bunch of multiculturalism. There's not a bunch of leftism. And again, the emphasis is on duty and social cohesion. Yeah, you probably don't need a death penalty there.
So why don't you argue for that instead of the death penalty? It seems to be working pretty well there.
Well,
right?
I haven't argued for the death penalty. I've just argued that it can be extremely effective in the right conditions. That's
Deterrent,
my
yes.
whole.
And
If
but
you
most
guys
of those
would ever
conditions,
just absorb my opening statement, my
No, we
opening statement
understand.
was,
We
Yeah,
understand,
hey,
Rachel.
the death
We're not
penalty
saying
absolutely can be a deterrent.
the problem is
Yes.
every example that you've brought up has unfortunately been unable to prove that the death penalty is the reason that this is specifically happening. And when you look at these other countries that do not have the death penalty and achieve similar outcomes, it seems to be because of that social cohesion that you said is a
Only-
good thing and
But
agree with.
again,
So
what we're
maybe
saying
I
is,
can ask the question then, if we, because I think it's state to state, right? Currently in America, it depends on the
Mhm.
state, but if we like maybe enforced federally and like overrid everything and said, you know what, for this crime and on, we're going to enforce the death penalty. If you do X, Y, or Z, death penalty, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If we did that, do you think that would deter future crimes from happening going forward?
yes, only if we made it so that you don't get 7 appeals, you don't get 2 mistrials, you don't get all these mistrials, you don't get 20 years to sit there, you don't have this slow moving thing where you're going to sit in jail for 3
25-year
years before you
process,
even go to
right.
trial. If it
Yeah.
was the situation where we said, okay, these are heinous crimes, you're going to get trial within 6 months. And you're not going to get an appeal unless there's an extreme circumstance, like other countries do. Yes, I definitely think that would work. Can these guys prove that it is not the threat of the death penalty? Can you prove it's not that?
So before we try to do that, do you acknowledge that, like, under what you just prescribed, there would be an increase in innocent people being killed, and it's already about like almost 13%. Do you acknowledge that it would go up under what you just described?
It may go up. I don't know that you could say it absolutely would go up. It may go up.
Well, wait, Rachel, come on. Like,
Well,
if
we
it's
can argue
already
that this
with
is a
the
deterrent,
process
too.
that you're bemoaning, which is like this 25 ridiculous process with all these appeals. Don't get me wrong. I think that's ridiculous too. But if we have the death penalty, unfortunately, we have to make absolutely sure that we are killing these people on like good grounds. If we get rid of that, and right now it's 1 in 8 people are exonerated, you can't imagine that at least a few more people would not get exonerated if we don't have the process to check whether or not they're being innocent.
Well, look,
It's already 1 in 8.
I don't like the U.S. justice system at all. I think there's a ton of problems
Well,
with it. I
hold on,
think
that's a pivot
everyone,
though. Rachel, do you think
no,
that
it's
more
not a
people
pivot
would
because
die
you're
innocently?
what the prompt is whether or not the death penalty is
Right,
an
you keep
effective
retreating to
deterrent, and you
this.
keep saying, but it could be bad because innocent people could be
no,
killed.
right, because
That is
Rachel, if
completely
all we're gonna do
aside
here
from-
is just say, look, if you
Hey,
do
keeps interrupting
anything,
me,
fucking
so
sorry,
I can't
Rachel,
answer your question if
because
you're
we're gonna go in
interrupt.
circles.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I just want to cut to the chase here. Look, like we said, I'm gonna keep saying, and look, you could have the deterrent be life in prison, or you could have it be death. I think Ryan's argument is that one of those is not very marginally different from the other. But all I'm saying is, if you said every crime was punishable by death, of course people are going to commit less crimes if they think that stealing a candy bar will get them killed. However,
So it's an
if
effective
that's
deterrent.
Yes.
and that effective is the key word there, because effective meaning, oh, crime goes down, sure, but that's why I need you to positively affirm why you want to live in this society where more innocent people are being killed to get this lower rate of crime. Is that worth it to you? Because if you don't want to defend that because you know it's a harder position to defend, I understand, like that is a valid debate tactic. But the problem is, if you're saying, hey, the death penalty is a deterrent, I can take that to the logical conclusion. It's like, yeah, we should just kill everyone for every fucking crime. And then is that the world you want to live in, where suddenly we're just killing fucking everyone, and I can accuse you of something and you get very little due process and you die?
Well, if you're
I
talking
think
about this,
already-
we can talk about less people being killed as well too, because those people are not killing. So I went ahead and sent a Stanford law review over to Sarah, and what it shows is that a study by Joanna Shepard, based on the data from all states, right, finds that each death sentence deters 4.5 murders, and that execution deters 3 additional murders. Her study also investigates that the contested
Sarah, can you
question
post that in
whether
the private
execution
chat?
deters crime by passion, murders
Wait,
by Nathan, everybody else.
Yeah, Marta, can you throw that in the private chat so we can do it too? And
I-
maybe
I-
you said it a little fast. Can you say it again?
So a study by Joanna. Hold on. Let me. Or
maybe if I have it in front of me.
I'm
Sarah, can you
I'm gonna send because it's a picture. I'm gonna send them to you guys directly.
Yeah, it was a PDF, so I couldn't it wouldn't let me send a link, right?
What's it?
So
What's it called again? You said it's a Stanford study.
Yeah, so this is it's a Stanford Law Review. It's called "Is Capital Punishment Morally Required?" This is kind of like something that's been famously done. I'm going to go ahead and read it off. A study by Joanna Shepard, based on data from all states, finds that each death sentence deters 4.5 murders, and an execution deters 3 additional murders. Her study also investigates the contested question whether execution deters crimes of passion and murders by inmates. So we can also see this as well too. So it does deter by this study as well too. So we can also look at this as a deterrent by this Stanford study. So I think that would also just to go ahead and bounce off of what Rachel was talking about, this not only stops at one person, but would you also agree with me that if I have a worldview and I'm arguing for that in this debate and I never change your mind, but the 10,000 people watching this debate, it changes their mind, would that be a deterrent? And that's what she's talking about. I think that overall in the premise, what you're arguing for is like, oh, this is one innocent life or that. You're arguing for that. But this person continuously killing in most cases, this is, you could say crimes of passion, things like that, or even people that are rapists. Are they able to be rehabilitated? Would this stop them? Do you want those people to be released in society or kill more in prison? This is something that we have not have an answer for ever since the beginning of this debate. Even in my opening statement, I still don't have an answer for this.
Can I ask? Can I kind of prompt a thought process within that? Because we're saying, is it a deterrent for crime? We already have sentencing and laws out there right now that would presumably deter crime to begin with, even at life in prison, or things of that nature. So if we already have laws in place to deter crime, could we conclude that those are working, or are people still committing crimes and so on and so forth with the chance or hope that they don't get caught or things of that nature?
Well, I would like them to answer Marte's question first, but
Yep.
the thing about that is that a lot of people who are violent criminals don't give a fuck about being in prison. They love prison. They can run their crime networks from prison. Prison is not a deterrent for them. Death might be, because you can't keep doing your crime and you can't, be a crime boss or whatever from, the beyond. So.
Well, might be
But I
doesn't
would
feel
like
very
to hear
strong.
them answer Marte's question that he asked at the end there. If he wants
Yes,
to.
sir. I was reading, so I didn't get the exact question.
I don't have an answer for that. So
But my understanding is this is, or from what I can tell, this is one of the studies that's been critiqued by the National Research Council in regards to this question, and that they've said repeatedly, no study to date has adequately controlled for variables that affect both capital punishment and crime rates, and they don't like that. This is a paper that's been critiqued extensively. Again, at best, there's no conclusive evidence that this is that it deters. And even that paper, I was kind of skimming through the conclusion. It suggests there may be deterrent, and it should be like further investigated. But that's certainly not a causal link. That's kind of a let's do more research, which I'm not opposed to, as it definitely still exists.
Ryan,
so you don't have any reputations, what you just said.
Well, hold on. First of all, he did say this is a very questioned as to whether or not the methods of these studies is actually like effectively showing what they're claiming to show. But regardless, like let me cede you this point. If this study showed, like without a doubt, like this was each capital punishment resulted in 3 innocent lives saved, I think obviously that's a good thing. Like, how the fuck do you argue against that? The problem is if it can also show me, because we can talk about, like we said, obviously, if you make the harshest punishment for any crime, death, it's probably going to reduce at least to some degree. In the same way, when you make abortion illegal, some leftists might argue, people will still get back alley abortions, which is true, but abortion rates do go down. It's going to deter it at least a little bit. By the way, they're not punishing abortion by death there. It's just, hey, we made it a crime. Like, deterrent is the punishment, right? Now, the severity, we can argue, is the severity of death so much worse than the severity of life in prison that it's doing this, and it seems like that's not borne out. However, if this is true, let's just say every single time you kill a guy, you're saving 3 to 5 innocent people, and that's an obvious utilitarian argument there. You have to then show that you're not also killing 1 in 8 innocent people every single time, which is why we kept pushing back on that. And you'd have to show that this is not going to cost the state more. Now, if you don't give a shit about the cost, sure, like we're killing the people, we're saving the innocent lives, great. Now, how are we making it so the innocent people don't get killed? Because for every innocent person, 3 innocent people we save by killing 1, 1 in 8 people is going to die innocently, right? And then if you reduce the time, this long drawn out process, now that number is going to go up, just obviously. So that's why we can push it back there.
Just conceded the whole debate, but now we're talking about just semantics of how bad. That's all we're doing is getting into the weeds of like how bad, is it a deterrent or less of a deterrent? So the whole
that's why he's going, well, what's the least crime that you think we should punish by death? He wants to change the debate because he's already conceded
that's why, again, I actually didn't read the prompt until I got in here. And if it's literally, can you deter people by saying, I'll kill you? It's so fucking obvious that it's a ridiculous premise.
It's not my fault you don't do your homework.
Well, can I say, I think
this was the... Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah. I mean, I think that soy is getting us closer to a more interesting conversation for sure. But I still think that the life in prison without parole, like you guys, the obligation is always going to fall on you guys to demonstrate that there's a significant difference between crime deterrence of life in prison without parole and the death penalty specifically. That is on you guys to make that case. And you have
because the debate could just as easily be, if I take away your fucking cookies for a crime, is it going to make less people do the crime? And the answer is obviously yes too. The question is, should we do the death penalty?
Don't fucking touch my cookies.
Could you fucking kill? If you threaten to kill someone, will at least some portion of the people you're threatening to kill not do the thing because you're threatening to kill them? It's so fucking obvious. It's
I'll give you an example. Let's have a Nintendo at home. It's a PS5. Whatever you want to call the system.
First of all, Marte already gave you a study that did demonstrate that, and I already gave you worldwide data that when we're talking about the more populous countries and not countries like Monaco that have 300 people in them, the countries that have capital punishment do have the lowest rates of serious crime in the world. And I did contextualize that by saying it's part of a broader system that works, and that the reason it doesn't work everywhere is because if you're not serious about it, it's not a good deterrent, which is another blatantly obvious thing, right? If you have the death penalty, but like nobody really uses it and they give you 20 years and 7 appeals, well, yeah, of course it's not going to be a deterrent. But in places where they're serious about it, it is a very good deterrent. We have provided evidence. What you haven't provided is evidence that to the contrary of that.
Well,
we
have by showing that there are places where there's the death penalty there's death penalty for crimes and it doesn't necessarily deter them, like we showed in Singapore with the drug use. And we showed also that there are countries that don't have the death penalty.
That fell flat on its face when we got into it, Soy Pill.
No, we showed if you have some threshold, if you are using a very small amount, that's not deterring people, but the drug usage is going up overall. The drugs are coming from somewhere, and these people should otherwise be punishable by death.
What's punishable by death is the trafficking, and that has decreased
up to 500 grams of weed. Has the drug trafficking completely decreased?
It's decreased 66% within the first 4 years of them implementing capital punishment for drug trafficking. Yes.
Okay, and I do concede that point. That clearly is a deterrent at that point. Now, look, if you look at these other countries like Iceland, Austria, Ireland, New Zealand, and you look at their violent crime rate, and it says, okay, these people do not have the death penalty in these cases. You have to show that death penalty is at some point the reason why deterrent is working in these other countries with similar or even worse crime indexes. Like,
wait, hold on, that makes no sense. If I don't have a punishment because there's nothing to punish, why would I need the death penalty? So that's like, it's irrelevant. So it's like, what you're talking about is like, so that makes no sense. You're talking about like countries where there's little to no crime. We're not going to have a death penalty. Thus, why have a deterrent if there's nothing to deter? That's basically what you're saying right now. So I think
there's some amount of violent crime everywhere, and there's some level.
And you brought up Singapore and Japan, which already had very low rates of crime.
Murder or anything like that that's substantial that we integrate in China or Singapore. Anything that Rachel's talked about, like that's not been mentioned. So if you don't have this specific thing to deter, why have the thing there? Like that's almost a damn near non sequitur.
Well, no, again, because you bring up countries that already had very low rates of violent crime, and then say the death penalty is the reason for this, right?
Well, no. What she's saying is that what you're saying is that if there's no crime that's punishable by death, right? Why have this there, right? Why have the deterrent there if it's non-existent? This is very simple shit. So all I'm saying is that what you're arguing for is like, let's have this thing. Why isn't it there? when the shit isn't even happening to
Right.
punish.
And that brings us to the more interesting conversation, which is
Yeah.
if you do implement the death
A
penalty
different
for these
debate.
things,
Let's
if
do
you
a
do
different
implement,
debate since I just
does
lost this one.
it actually
Yeah.
deter the crime? And it's like, again, Rachel, if the conversation is, hey, if I threaten everyone with death, will they not do it? Obviously. And if that's the debate, then I don't understand why you thought that we were going to come in here and say, yeah, you know, every single person, if you point a gun at their
Ryan
head
did.
and say, I'm going to, well, Ryan's saying, and which
Not
is the
even
much
necessarily
more
said that
interesting
either.
conversation, because this is the dichotomy that you guys are kind of forced into is
Oh, it's more
either you
interesting.
do,
So
either
let's
you
switch
do
to
the
a
death
different
penalty.
prompt that I haven't
Miss,
lost or
hey, look,
conceded to
I
yet
know
because
that
it's more
you're not
finish,
allowed to
please.
interrupt your husband at home, so you're trying to get it all here, but please let me finish. Okay. Look, so you either have you're saying that it's the
Oh,
death
he's so
penalty or not
funny.
the death penalty,
So
right? There, what Ryan is saying is that there's all these other punishments that we can do that clearly reduce the crime rate. We can look at the crime rates drop from around the world. We looked at your New York example and we can see, hey, when the death penalty wasn't there, it's still plummeted. When the death penalty wasn't there before, it was still going down. So all of these other things are clearly deterrents that clearly work and are clearly effective. And we have
Okay,
a reduced
so
crime rate
do you-
across the world. So if you're just saying, hey, if I had nothing or the death penalty, would the death penalty work as a deterrent? Obviously, that's such a boring fucking conversation. We're saying, is it worth
Well, you
implementing
agreed
the
to it.
fucking death
Okay,
penalty?
you little prattle machine. You little prattle machine. Do you want to just concede this debate then and switch to a different debate?
Rachel, I will say this so clearly, and you can clip this. If you're saying, do you want to concede that if you had said, hey, there is no punishment for this crime or we'll kill you, that obviously just saying we'll kill you will make them
That's a
do it
false
less?
dichotomy.
Fucking
That's
obvious.
a
I would
false
concede that one
dichotomy.
too.
We're sticking to the prompt. It's not our fault that you literally said,
Won't
I
concede
didn't see
that.
the prompt until I got in here. And when I got in here, I just conceded to the debate. Okay, well, then we won the
debate
Can I
that
read
if
something
you threaten
We're
to murder
literally
people,
both not even on the same side in this.
Let's pull it back.
Ryan's the
well,
only
we
one
kind
that
of are.
brought anything of a fight, and that's not even a fight. Go ahead. Proceed.
So I want to quote something from the paper that Marte brought up. It said, like, this is from the conclusion. It says, if the recent evidence of deterrence is ultimately shown to be correct. So they're even like hedging their bets. They're like unsure. And again, more recent studies have repeatedly shown there is no conclusive effect. So I think that you're not making the strongest case by providing this paper specifically.
You're still dancing around the subject as far as they're saying the pro that's saying it's shown to have a deterrent, and then later on you're going ahead and recanting all that was specifically stated in that article that I sent you. That's what I'm saying, is that you're saying, well, they're hedging their bets. Can you show me they're hedging their bets? How?
Well, they're
Where in
saying
the
if
article
the
does it say
recent
that?
evidence of deterrence is ultimately shown to be correct. So they're not saying that it is correct. They're saying this recent evidence, and again, more recent studies have demonstrated over and over there is no conclusive evidence. So it seems like this from 2005 or 2006, right? So if more recent studies are saying that, hey, since this paper was published, that that evidence has not held up, and again, like when we talk about the amount of people who are quote unquote saved by the death penalty, it looks at like a national average, which is very, very abstracted and doesn't really tell us the full picture based on a lot of the things that Rachel brought up in the opening, right? That we have to look at more specific stuff.
I heard this diatribe, but you still have no refutation, I hear. So just speculation.
The refutation is that this doesn't demonstrate what you're claiming to.
Oh, so a paper that outright states in the beginning, and then you're saying, well, it's speculative at the end.
Read me what it outright states that you're saying.
Counter.
Can you read me from the paper what you're specifically claiming it like how it specifically supports your point?
Okay, in the beginning it says it basically states from 1997 to 1999, it shows that each death sentence deters 4.5 murders, and that an execution deters 3 additional murders. Her study also investigates the contested question. When we go down the line of all this other stuff, there's nothing that refutes that.
It sounds like you're reading an article about the paper, not the paper.
This is the paper.
Sometimes there's
Well, I mean,
usually like an abstract.
They're discussing the paper. I mean, we can
Okay.
talk about all this, but when you open this up, is capital
article
punishment
from?
morally required? This is the review. So, I mean, of course, it's a review, but you would have to offer refutation to that initial statement of saying the deter, right? How does it not deter?
Not necessarily.
Right?
I think that if the paper itself doesn't support it, then I definitely don't have to. But which is why I asked you to quote the paper itself. Like I quoted the actual paper at the very bottom. I was just saying how, like, if this evidence does end up being true, which again, it seems like what they're saying is that there's reasonable doubt. Like in the conclusion, the first thing they say is that they outline a lot of the claims that Soy and I have made throughout this, and they say, well, there may be reasonable doubt to this, but they aren't saying that it's been certainly decided that there is a deterrent. So I just don't think this supports you as strongly as you think it does.
Can I
Look,
try
we're
something,
getting in the
Sarah, real
weeds.
quick?
We're getting in the weeds already because they've already conceded. Like they already
Right, Rachel,
conceded
I
that
have a very
obviously
important
the
question
death
to this. I
penalty
have a
is a
very,
deterrent.
well, hold on, just me. Ryan hasn't completely, but let me ask you something, Rachel. You have a kid, right?
What?
You have a kid, right? I'm not trying to make this personal, but this is just like a hypothetical. You have a
5.
child. Okay.
I'm gonna use the
Hypothetical.
low coders room real quick.
Pick one of them, right? Okay. Say this child walked up to you when they were still a child, right? I know they're all grown now, and they said, "Mommy, I want to go to the movies. Can I have $5? Would you give them $5 to go to the movies?" Or like, "Hey, Mommy, I want to." Maybe it's even more righteous. Can I have $5 to put in the collection plate? Right? Would you give them $5?
Sure.
Okay. Now, if they took one of Andrew's guns and pointed at your head, his 357 Magnum, and say, "Mommy, give me fucking $5 or I'll blow your head off," would they give you $5? Or would you give them
What?
$5? Would you give them $5 if they said, "Mommy, I'm going to blow your fucking head off if you don't give me $5?
Well, no, I would just rip the gun out of their hand and
No, they're
then,
standing across the room. You're not
absolute
close
shit
enough.
out of them.
They're about to blow your head off.
I don't know what
this is trying to demonstrate, Rachel,
I'll
is
just concede it. Sure. What's your point?
The point is that there are ways to do this, to deter crime that we're doing across the country because the death penalty is not so common, that is making crime go down. And the death penalty, while definitely obviously going to deter crime if you did it for even the most extreme situations, like we said, like thievery, it doesn't like make the argument so interesting as to should we do it. Like I'm asking you to make the positive, like, can we do the death penalty? Not obviously, if the delineation is between nothing and the death penalty, or even like half of a life sentence and the death penalty, that the death penalty is probably going to make people question it a little more. The question is, should we even be having the death penalty? The reason I came in here with my intro and said it's more costly, it's going to get innocent people killed, and it doesn't really seem to deter crime in the places that we've implemented it, is because what's the point of just saying, yeah, okay, people who are scared of death won't do the specific thing if the otherwise punishment is practically nothing? Like, that's why it's not an interesting conversation. Just be like, yeah, hey, obviously my child, if they threaten me with a gun, I'd give them $5.
We've been through this like 5 times, Soy Pill. I understand you don't like the prompt. You want to change it to a different prompt. You want to have a more interesting conversation because you've abandoned the original one. But it's up to Sarah what she wants to do here, because if you've conceded, but Ryan hasn't, right? Like, where do we go here? What
Ryan,
do we do here?
will you double down with me and say
I'm not
that death is
Actually,
bad?
I have
you
an
what you
idea.
want.
If we'd like
Well-
to, and Ryan and I will hand it right back to you, but I want to throw an option out for all of you because I do feel like we're kind of coming to a standstill. And my apologies, it was a bad prompt. It was handed to me and I didn't even think twice about it. So
Well, if
Okay.
everyone agreed to it, Sarah, that's not your fault.
Yeah.
true, I will still take all of the blame right here. I'm the lady of the panel that has to take the blame. So I will take it. It was on me. I should have thought twice about it. So here's what I want to offer to the 4 of you. And Ryan, you will have your opportunity to add in prior to. But if we would like to, we can shut down this debate. We can close statements, go read a few super chats, and then open the panel. And now we can go into an open dialogue without anybody backtracking on their original statements or messing with the prompt. And we can have more of an interesting conversation if you so choose. Or we can continue down this path. I'm happy to do so. And we can try to finagle more blood from that tulip.
Let's do that. I can concede that Ryan can share half the L with Soy Pill if he wants to,
Hell
because
yeah.
he's actually
Let's
got
let
a dog
communism share
in
the
fight or
L.
trying to.
Very
Ryan,
sweet
did
of
you
you.
realize
Yeah,
that we
let's get into
conceded
closing
that if you
statements. I'm
hold a
good.
gun to someone's head, they will not want to do the thing that you otherwise
Well-
threatened them not to do?
Well, this
If I
this
threaten
steers me
all of
into
you
what I
with
was going to
the
say
We're
anyway.
still in the weeds right now.
I am
Go
open to Sarah's proposal, but I wanted to say it in this context. Like, we're not arguing that like stand your ground laws or castle doctrine laws don't deter crime, right? And so those are things where crime is being met with potential violence, and I think that does deter people from engaging in crime. But that's not the death penalty. That's not capital punishment. And I think that the obligation again falls on you guys to prove that.
You'd
that
have a hard
death
time
penalty
proving that it's not an
specifically-
extension of capital punishment
I don't
by
think I have to
law.
prove that.
and
They're
by-
just fundamentally
by
different
proxy.
policies.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
I don't have to
just
prove anything about that.
semantics.
They just
And
are.
Rachel, I believe you were the final one. Do you agree to close down and go into open panel?
Yep. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else I got to do. I did have to take that personal call. My dad's in a nursing home and there's like a little bit of an issue with him and they need my permission for stuff. So I can stay, but I may have to step away for a quick minute,
Yeah,
to
Yeah,
that's
gotta
fine.
do.
Totally okay. Okay, so here's what we'll do if everybody's on board, correct? Okay. So Ryan, if you want to kick us off with your closing statement, and we'll go from there.
Do you mind if I don't go first? Is that kind of
I can go first if you want me to.
Okay,
Go
I'd
ahead,
appreciate it.
Soy.
Yeah. So I came in here, and this is on me. I'm sorry, chat and everyone watching. I thought we were going to be arguing a pro or affirmative stance for the death penalty. I think that the opposing side has done a very poor job of proving that the death penalty deters crime in the way that they say they do. But if we're going to have the most boring argument ever, which is, hey, if someone has no punishment or is going to be killed for the thing that they did, they were at some degree, some people are going to be less likely to do it. Yeah, of course. This is a ridiculously, obviously, so boring thing to concede that I don't understand why anyone would try to claim victory over it, because the interesting conversation is, what do we actually fucking do in society, and not, hey, if I put a gun to your head, will you be less likely to do the thing I tell you not to do? Yeah, no shit. The question is, hey, how do we implement the death penalty? The way that we've implemented the death penalty in America seems to not be working. It's more costly, it kills innocent people, and it doesn't seem to deter crime. In the places where they have done it, and I have conceded this, that as per Rachel's source, the trafficking in the Philippines or the Singapore has gone down after the death penalty, and I would never argue against that. That seems like a stat that is just true. The question is that a good thing? How many innocent people are being killed and locked up for it? I don't think that's good. I think that we should do everything in our power to make sure that innocent people don't go to jail. And while I think that maybe one innocent person going to jail for 500,000 criminals is, actually maybe an okay trade-off, 1 in 8 is fucking insane, and which is obviously more in Singapore is way worse. So no, I don't think we should do the death penalty, not because I don't think anyone deserves death. There's plenty of people I want to fucking murder, and I just think that it's just not effective. So that's my argument. That's what I came here to argue. But yeah, we can have the boring conversation too.
Beautiful. Ryan, are you ready?
Yeah, I think so. So even if we entertain the idea that the death penalty might deter someone, the evidence just isn't there to show it works better than the alternatives we already have, like life without parole. What we do know is this: certainty deters more than severity. People are less likely to kill if they believe they'll get caught, not if the punishment is harsher down the line. And in the real world, the death penalty doesn't just fail to deter, it drains resources, delays justice, and executes the innocent. We've named them tonight. Cameron Todd Willingham, Carlos De Luna, Troy Davis. These are people who should still be alive. And let's be honest, if the other side wants to make the system more effective, what that really means is making it faster, harsher, and less careful. And they've said this, or at least Rachel has said this very clearly, that she would prefer that, which only guarantees that more innocent people will be killed, which seems to be a sacrifice she's willing to make. So if the policy doesn't clearly prevent violence and it risks taking innocent lives to preserve the illusion that it does, it just has no place in a just system. There's simply a better way: solve more crimes, fund real defense, invest in prevention. The death penalty does not protect us. It just gambles with lives.
Thank you, Ryan. Rachel, to you.
All right. So what Ryan just said, he was kind of onto something, but then he totally shit the bed with that. So yes, the point is to make it swifter, more efficient, and more certain. And those are the factors that do enhance the effectiveness of having a death penalty in place. However, as I said, the problems with the American justice system and these like more libertarian, leftist leaning justice systems, why the death penalty is not as effective in those cases, has more to do with the inefficiency of the system and the political correctness that prosecutors have to deal with. So it's not baked in, and this would be a whole separate debate, but it is not baked in that you would necessarily have to have more innocent people getting wrongfully executed under a more efficient system. You could simply have a system that is not so bogged down with political correctness and social justice that prosecutors basically have their hands tied, and you get like riots anytime a criminal gets convicted of something and gets given the death penalty, and you have protesters everywhere. You could simply make it so that you didn't have all of that political baggage with the convicting these criminals, and you could theoretically and practically improve the efficiency of the system, make the death penalty more effective. And just like they have in Japan doesn't have a bunch of people being wrongfully executed. They only have to do it two or three times a year because their system is so much more efficient. There's social cohesion. They do not tolerate protests and riots and political correctness and all of this garbage that we deal with in the United States. You don't have George Floyd riots every time a criminal in Japan gets arrested and executed, right? And they don't have endless appeals and all this nonsense that we have here. And it works, right? So if you could have a system where you have more social cohesion, you have less corruption in the system, you don't have all this garbage political correctness going on, you could have a more efficient system where the death penalty is so effective that you barely have to use it. And I think we did a good job of demonstrating that this could be the case and that it's historically been the case, and that even the soy pill kind of just conceded to the prompt there, and I think we won. So big dub for me and Marte. Everybody go follow Marte. He's going to be the next best thing on the debate panels. So you go follow him on Instagram and YouTube and everywhere else that he is. Twitter X.
Thank you, Rachel. And Marte, to you.
It's funny. So I'm going to go ahead and just circle all back to this debate, for example. Soy pill, if you knew you're going to take a fat ass L in this debate, would that have deterred you from doing this debate and actually doing homework? I would say yes, that might have done that. So you wouldn't say this whole thing is boring, right? So that in a sense is an example that I'm going to use for this. If we knew that we were going to take an L before we did a debate, we probably would have said, no, we're not going to do this because it's boring. I'm going to get life in prison with 4 people on a panel that I'm just going to have to suffer through litigation through. You went ahead and accepted this, but I would argue to say that if we knew we were going to take this L, you didn't do homework and you just said, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to avoid doing this because that is just a fat deterrent that I'm going to have to eat.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? No one had to threaten to kill me.
I'm showing you. Yeah, hold on. I'm still going. So that's a deterrent in itself that I'm presenting you. By admission, you went ahead and said, no, I didn't even really do research, didn't do anything. This is like the, example of us not knowing that there's death at the other end of this. We're walking in doing this, and you have just a free society of just boring outcomes and things that happen, right? By allowance, right? Absent a death penalty, what you do is you have more allowance of things happening. What you've also demonstrated that is if there's death for stealing candy bars and you've never reconciled this, if there's going to be a decrease of death or increase, right? You've actually went ahead and conceded the whole point and said that, you know what, if there's death all across the board, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and throw my hands up and say, yes, there's going to be less death, right? This is something you've said throughout the debate. Going back to this, and you've agreed on this, you conceded the debate in the beginning. If you knew that this whole debate was going to be boring, yet you still signed up for this debate, and I don't know why you would do that. This is showing that if I went ahead and said, hey, Soy Pill, I'm going to go ahead and tell you how boring this debate is. You don't want to do this. We would argue that that's a deterrent. But absent this deterrent of you knowing you're going to take this L, you went ahead and did this. That demonstrates the fact that you're walking into something because there was no deterrent present to do because you didn't do homework or do anything for this, right? You just walked into it. So I can see my time.
Thank you, Marte. And again, I find that the fail is on me. Most of the time I read through the prompts very well and give it some thought, but this
Sarah,
time
please don't, Sarah. It's not your fault. First of all, it's my fault for not reading the prompt. But second of all, it's also my fault because I thought there's no way we could possibly be so stupid as to hide behind the most obvious fucking question in the world, which is if someone threatens to kill you, will you not do the thing? But yeah, I guess that's what we're doing to declare victory. I forgot to declare victory in my closing, Sarah.
Yeah. While we're declaring victory, I think I've successfully defeated all 3 of my fellow panelists tonight. And simply Rachel and Marte and Soy have all failed to demonstrate that the death penalty specifically deters crime any more than life in prison without parole or any other swift.
Ryan, if I told you you'd die after this debate, would you have come?
I think in my mind, though,
Perhaps.
I was thinking the prompt would have gone further as well. So
It's our fault for thinking past the words and reading between the lines. Sarah.
I think
it's really
so dumb. I will take the L for the evening. You can all take your W's.
You mean if you would have had a deterrent, you wouldn't have done this, Soy?
No, see, if actually you proved my point, which is if you didn't have to threaten to kill me to get me not to come because I thought it would be so boring, that would also deter me.
Well, no, that would be you not doing your research or doing due diligence. That's what that is. Not me threatening to kill you.
No, the point is that death was not a necessary deterrent in this case to get me to not show up.
That's on you still. So.
Fair enough.
So if you want to see the winner against all 3 panelists more, you should come check out Radical Coder, youtube.com/Radical Coder. Absolute W's all across the board. Sorry, Rachel. I mean, Andrew's
whoever
wife,
declares
sorry, Marte,
victory
sorry,
last
Mr.
wins, all right? And I'm lastly declaring the W, all right? So...
Well, I'll take the L. You can all take the W's, and it works out just fine there. All right.
Guys,
so yes.
Sarah, I have good news. Well, first of all, I think it's funny that Ryan thought it was going to insult me if he calls me Andrew's wife. Like, that's awesome.
That was me. I did that.
Yes, I am Mrs. Andrew Wilson. You can just call me Mrs. Andrew Wilson, Andrew's wife, the Crucible's wife. whatever you want to, that's fine. It's like, I love
I
that.
don't think it's
take it as
insulting,
an insult.
Rachel. I think it's playing into your ideology. Obviously, you like it. That's why I do it. I think it's interesting and kind of
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That's so kind of you. But
Yeah.
Sarah, Andrew has told me to notify everyone that he has awoken from his slumber and he wishes to drink and join the panel and
Hell
give
yeah.
Soy Pill the interesting conversation that he's craving.
Good. Yes, I
Ooh.
can't wait to have a really interesting conversation with Andrew. It'll
Mr.
be so
Wilson,
fun.
the link is pinned at the top of the chat. I did just drop it. You're welcome to join, or your wife has the link as well if she's willing to share it with you. Also, to anyone else who would like to join the panel, the link is now pinned. You're welcome to start scuttling backstage while we read through super chats. Now is the time to do so. It does fill up back there, so hurry. All
Can I say
right.
really quick, Sarah? I just
Yeah,
hit
sure.
666 subs, which is the mark of the beast. So I think that's absolutely beautiful for this moment in time. But I would love to get that much higher. So please
Like,
send all
I'm
your
gonna-
followers over.
I'm gonna go unsub.
Wait, are you opening
just-
the panel right now? Can I use the restroom? Is that a thing?
Yeah, you. No, I'm not bringing the panel on yet. We're gonna read through super chat. So if you got to pee, you got to tinkle.
Okay, just
go
in
tinkle.
case. Save the ones for me.
Do you need mommy's permission? Okay, we'll read a few of these. And the backstage is already filling up. All right. Firm Audits with a big 5 says, first, I agree with Mrs. Wilson. Come on, everyone, and donate. Thank you, Firm. I appreciate that. The J-Man with the big 10, shout out to Marte and Rachel. Christ is risen. Kick these soy boy betas to the curb. Also, my first son will be born on Wednesday. Glory to God. You guys rule. Congratulations, J-Man.
Yeah.
Tomatoes in the chat.
Congrats, J-Man.
May Christ keep
He's
you.
doing his part.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love baby
Me too.
conversations. Mike Ball with a big 5. Good evening, Sarah and family. And hello to you, Mike Ball. And shout out to my mods. Thank you for cleaning out the trash earlier. I appreciate you kindly. That is very important to us. I can never say this person's name. I don't know. With the big 20, happy Memorial Day. And yes, shout out to the panelists, especially. That was one thing I had to check with all of them to make sure that none of us have lives or actually wanted to go to a beach or do something fun this weekend. So thank you to all 4 of you for being so willing to join on a holiday weekend.
Losers.
That Brad with the big 10. Cheers to Rachel. A 10 if there is one. That's quite
Oh,
a
thank you,
compliment.
Brad. But we've established multiple times that I am a 5. So thank
I
you
thought
so
you were
much.
a
So I
6.
appreciate it.
I thought we put it at a 6.
She
I
said
thought
it,
it
not
was
me.
a 6.
I'm just an average looking lady. What's wrong with that? Why does everybody think that's
Rachel,
insulting? I'm
I
just
can't
a
believe I'm saying
normal
this.
looking lady.
You deserve so much more than the things you put on yourself and the things your husband's put on you.
No, okay, we have to have this conversation, Soy Pill, because he hasn't put anything on me. He rates me higher than I rate myself. He
Okay, that's
says
fair.
all the time. He says all the time that I'm smarter than he is. I completely disagree.
Me too.
I don't like this idea that we have to fluff up all
Don't do
women
that.
and pretend that we're all 10s. We're not all 10s. I am 44.
I didn't say all women's were 10.
I'm a Midwestern mom, okay? I am not winning beauty pageants. I am not, Sarah did not invite me because I am hot to look at, okay? I'm here because I have stuff to say and,
Wait, what does Andrew rate you?
things to argue. Huh?
What does Andrew
I
say?
think you might be
Does he
smarter
say
than
you're
Andrew.
a 10?
No.
Andrew doesn't give you a 10.
Mm-mm.
Oh, man.
If he did, I would tell him he's ridiculous. And I would just be like, stop lying. I don't want him to lie to me and be like, oh my God, you're a 10. I'm not a 10.
Do you think there's
clearly.
a person who objectively thinks that you're, or subjectively thinks you're a 10? Like, obviously this could happen.
He told me I'm a 10 on
Sarah,
the white
can we
scale.
find someone in your audience that thinks Rachel's a 10?
All
Other
right.
than that, Brad.
Physically, I'm not
To
a 10.
the
But he
chat.
gives me a
If
10
you,
on the
all
white
right,
scale. Okay?
everyone drop your ratings for Rachel. Whatever you think, it better be a 6 and above because I think she's very beautiful. So drop your numbers in the chat and we'll get a consensus on what we think. There you go.
Listen, he gave me a 10 on the wife scale, which is super important to me. That's what I want to be a good wife. I want to be a good mom. I have a best-selling book. People seem to think I'm kind of smart. That's more than enough for me. I do not need the world to tell me I'm the most pretty and the most smartest. And I'm super special. I'm just more realistic than that. So I don't need
That's
all the
fair.
smoke blown up my ass, you know?
That's fair. Well, and I think also who it's coming from is what is meaningful as well. Like to me, if some random person on the street telling you you're hot or beautiful or whatever, it's kind of like doesn't really mean much. But coming from your spouse or significant other, and the things that are important to me, that makes more sense. So
I think generally telling people average is an insult is leading to some decay and delusion in society, and that's preposterous. Just telling people that you're average, that's the most insulting thing you could do. Well, what would be an average if average is an insult? So we're definitely making 10 the average. This is also more ridiculous. So you have to develop some kind of standard that's consistent. And when you make standard like the standard of average insulting, now you have delusion everywhere where Rachel can't even say, you know what, I'm just a 6 and I'm fine with that. Now people are telling her she should be insulted for just something that's average. I think I'm average.
I super agree with everything you're saying right now, which is crazy. I never thought I'd ever say that. But the problem is I would want to marry someone who thinks I'm a 10, even if they're delusional. God damn it, I'm going to marry someone who thinks I'm a 10, right?
But you don't want somebody lying to you every single day.
No, they're not lying. Either I am a 10 in their eyes,
mapping that
or
on.
at the very least, they're so delusional that no matter how ugly I ever am, they think I'm a 10. That's what I want, right? They're just constantly.
I'm changing the debate prompt. It's official. Is Rachel Wilson a 10, or is it justified to say that Rachel is a 10?
Hold on, I don't think any of us agree with that. No offense, Rachel.
No, I'm not. See, that's the thing. I'm not offended. I did not. I actually count myself very lucky because I didn't grow up in the digital age. Look, guys, I'm going to be 44 or 45 in 2 months. Okay. First of all, when I was 19, I was probably a 7. Okay. I was probably a 7 back then.
Isn't Andrew's metric you're the most hot when you're 20 or something?
I'd say like most of us peak somewhere between 18 and 27, right? I would say. But I had my first baby at 20 and then I had 4 more. So it's like, I mean, that changes you, right? So like at 19, I was probably at my peak. I was probably like a 7, maybe a 7.5 on a really good day. I was pretty fit and I looked pretty good. But the life changes and things change, and I'm 45 years old, and for me to run around saying I'm a 10 is just ridiculous. It's just not reality whatsoever. And luckily,
does Andrew say you're as beautiful as you are as the day you met, though?
Well, he says he loves me more than when he met me, and that he thinks I'm cool.
Oh, wait, stop there. I just want to imagine happiness. Okay, we can. That's all I need to know.
Well, you can imagine happiness because we're super happy. Like we just took a little vacation together, and Andrew came back and was talking about how great of a time we had. We get along. We're super best friends. We love each other. The chemistry's always been there. It's never, there's never been a problem with that. But neither of us are going to sit here and gaslight each other and be like, you're a 10. No, you're a 10. It's like, we're both kind of average-ish. I think he's very attractive.
If he told you to tell him he's a 10, would you do it?
Huh?
If he told you, if he instructed you to tell him that he's a 10, would you do it?
Would you submit?
No, I would.
Would you submit to the will of the husband?
I'd probably be like, really? You want me to tell you you're a 10? Okay. Like, do you need therapy? Like, what's going on with you?
This sounds a little intransigent. This sounds a little rebellious.
Very feminist of you, Rachel.
Right.
Yeah,
Leave
it's
the
very
lady alone.
independent.
This is not. We've entertained this, and I love the fact that we're all having.
I'm ready for the panel to open up. This is the conversation.
I'm getting there. Cleaner with the big 5 says Rachel had the burden of proof as the affirmative until Soy literally conceded the prompt. Any further refutation, Soy and Ryan will have to prove.
Well, can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Since I never conceded the prompt, I repeatedly affirmed that the burden of proof remained on them, and they absolutely never even came close to overcoming that. So
That's fair. Vordum with the big 10. So Ryan, are you suggesting that 2020 protests were just that? You mean the fiery but mostly peaceful destruction that cost $2 billion? They stopped tracking this number during that time also.
So I'm absolutely not denying that there was violence. What I am saying is that it was, again, the largest civil rights protest in American history, and that the protests specifically did result in police reforms, and that people who paint them as just riots, they are intentionally doing so because they understand. Well, some of them understand it. Some of them are just stupid. But I assume Rachel's intelligent enough to understand that the protest probably worked, and that's why she's the kind of person who will just blanket them as fiery riots and whatever, because she doesn't want to see those police reforms.
Oh yeah, listen, when toddlers throw temper tantrums, more often than not, the parents give in. Didn't say that the riots didn't work. Sure, they worked. Doesn't mean that we should have a society that tolerates that kind of garbage.
Should we
She
kill
did it
the
right there. She flipped it
protesters?
again.
Fair enough. Robert with the big five. The leftist soy just conceded the entire debate, admitting that crimes which have death penalty attached will see lower crime output rates.
Well, first of all, I've conceded not that in general this always happens. I gave specific examples that counties in America where we do this, it actually doesn't have a lower rate. However, I do concede that the very basic, obvious question, which is in a vacuum, if you say, hey, otherwise we're increasing this deterrent or this punishment to death, yeah, of course people are going to do something less if you kill them. The question is more interesting and actually much more relevant is how do we do that? Should we do that? And does it actually fucking work? And the answer is it doesn't really seem to in the way that we want to. That's why it's like, hey, if you want to look at the country like Singapore and say we should be more like that and say, all right, how many innocents are you willing to kill? That's the more like, is that worth it to you? Because it's not worth it to me. That's why I don't want to do it. But if you're just saying, hey, the crime went down in this specific area, yeah, maybe sometimes that does work.
And can I just add one quick thing to that? Also, that I agree with most of that, but also that's why like things like castle doctrine and self-defense laws are effective at deterring crime more than just like capital punishment specifically.
If you agree, they're different things,
Ryan.
What
Ryan,
was that,
are
Rachel?
you? How do you feel about gun rights?
I like guns.
Great.
I'm pro gun rights.
So, like,
we all
are
love
you
guns
pro
here.
Second Amendment, or do you want to like limit it a lot? Are you like, oh, the school shootings?
I mean, we're going way off topic here. I'm generally in favor of laws that make it harder for certain people to get guns, but I'm never in favor, or almost never in favor of like actually like taking guns away from people. And most restrictions, I'm not necessarily in favor of. Reasonable gun control potentially. You'd have to be more specific.
Surprisingly based. I wasn't expecting that. Soy Pill, you're going to be so shocked to learn that Rachel is a firearms instructor.
No, you told us about it when you said that women were bad at.
Oh, there was a super chat. That's right.
No, I knew that.
That's right. Powder
I thought
dust.
that you thought I was some sort of like, scared
Trad wife
little...
who can't leave the house or whatever. No, I'm sure Andrew let you be a firearms instructor.
He did. Thank Andrew for that.
Yeah.
Powder Dusty with the Big Ten. A prison is a deterrent. Nobody likes prison, but the degree of dislike varies greatly by facility and sentence.
True.
That's like a kind of to Ryan's point, which I'll say, Ryan, I apologize because I didn't fight as hard in this area. I think there's a very strong argument to show that, like, yeah, life in prison is a pretty big fucking deal. Some people don't care, and that's true. You can give examples of people that just say, well, whatever, I can run my, mafia business outside of here. But most people don't want to go to crime for prison. It's a very, really good deterrent. And if you did that, the same reason I say, hey, if you would kill everyone for every crime, if you said, hey, you get life in prison for every single crime, if you get life in prison for speeding, you're going to see it go down. Whether or not we should do that is the interesting conversation. Not obviously,
sure.
Would people speed less if you got life in prison for going 66 in a 65 zone?
Yeah, don't let it happen again, motherfucker.
Vordum says with a Big Ten to the anti-death penalty group, if convicted child SA predators have high recidivism rates with no possibility of rehabilitation, what should be done? Also, was Rittenhouse justified or a murderer?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I think people like that probably like should be killed. Makes sense. You'd have to show me that it's not going to cost more, that it's not going to wrap up innocence. And therefore, I think that, yeah, these people should just be in prison for life, because if they have these high recidivism rates, we should never let them back out. They're going to abuse more people. I just don't know if it's better for society if we kill them, because now we're also killing people who might have been falsely accused, and the people who are falsely accused and don't die can potentially prove their innocence. And Rittenhouse was, sorry?
Now you've increased prison rate because
no. Child sexual assault. Oh, excuse me. Unless there's a baby in this child or some child in this prison, I think they're not going to be abusing them.
If they have a proclivity to do this to children, do you think they would do this to adults just the same?
Only ones that look like hot children.
I think a rape is a rape.
Well, sure. Okay. But to answer your question in good faith, yeah, if they're like raping people in prison, I don't think that necessarily means, okay, well, because these people are serial rapists, no matter where we put them, we should definitely kill them. Because even though I might agree it would be better if they were removed from society, I don't like the downstream effects of what this does when it's going to cost the taxpayer more and when it's going to get innocent people who aren't serial rapists killed. But if it's so cut and dry, it's like look, if I agree with you guys, if we're in this like vacuum where we can know 100% without a doubt, without the due process, we're like removed from the reality of real life, and we just know for a fact this person is bad. You know, we have the scales of Egyptian gods, and we can just know they're bad. Should we kill them? They have no chance of rehabilitation. Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Also, yeah, Rittenhouse was 100% self-defense.
Yeah, I would.
Nice.
Sorry, can I add to that
Yeah,
as
go
well?
ahead.
I think I would agree with most of what Soy said there. But as for the Rittenhouse thing, I also agree. He had due process, and it was ruled to be self-defense, and which is why I think it's really sad to see that he has demanded that like Carmelo Anthony should have life in prison, like well before his trial. I think it was a very disgusting thing to see from Kyle Rittenhouse, someone who was assumed guilty in the court of public opinion and should empathize with Carmelo, but instead he's been calling for him to have life in prison before his trial, which is really disgusting behavior.
To your point, Ryan, I would be very upset if Kyle Rittenhouse was murdered because he killed 2 people, when it turns out by having this extenuous, expensive process, we were able to prove his innocence. That would really actually upset me, because I think it was the most cut and dry thing of, hey, this guy was running away and he killed people. And yet everyone said, oh, he's a murderer. He fired into a crowd of protesters. He tried to kill black people. Like all of this just lies came out. And that's why the world that you kind of are pushing towards with this death penalty stuff does result in stuff, people like that getting killed, which I don't want. I think he should be let off for that.
All right. And Powder Dusty with a big 10. It's not Sarah's fault. It's Ryan's. Do better, Ryan. Yes, Ryan. We're all going to
I will
now
not be
pin this all
apologizing.
I
on
agree
you.
with our different.
I think Ryan did amazing tonight. I'm so proud of him.
Just Gerald with the big 10. Gerald appreciates big brain panel. Gerald is learning. Gerald, big dumb, but one day small smart.
Are you
And-
training
We
AIs?
love Just
for
Gerald.
super chats?
Learning is radical.
I love just Gerald. He's funny. Powder Dusty in with last and final one for now, and
told
I'll get
you.
through the rest
We
later.
find one.
10s for Rachel. And actually, I will say there was even some 11s and 12s in there, Rachel, just for the record,
Wow.
just so you know it. All
It's
right.
you know why? It's because they're incorporating my winning personality. They think that I'm so cool and so funny, and they're like, she's a 10 because she's so
Yeah.
cool and funny.
There you
Wait,
go.
so
Rick,
wait, Andrew
proud of
says
you,
you're a
Rick.
10 wife. Are you implying if you were a worse wife, you would also be like a 4?
Probably, yeah. But I'm a
And
great
he's
wife.
consistent,
I'm a
so-
great wife. I was up at like 6 a.m. this morning, which is like the middle of the night for me, making this man a snack because he was hungry. So I think I'm a pretty good wife. Yeah.
That's love. I'd at that point. I'd be like, nah, it's 6 a.m. I'm sleeping. It's
I
actually
gotta
more
say, you know-
dangerous to wake me up. If you want a snack, that would be your death penalty to ever wake me up.
I gotta say, I think Rachel and Andrew are neither of them are like hard on the eyes, but both of them have political opinions that make them less attractive. You know.
Well, thanks, Ryan.
Shots fired.
Yeah,
All
Captain
right.
Obvious.
The
Tell
panel
somebody
is
don't-
waiting patiently backstage. We're going to go ahead and kick it off and have some fun. Hang tight.
Theme, but okay.
All
Oh my
right.
gosh, he's
Got the whole panel. All right. Rally round guests,
Boy.
ladies and gentlemen, everyone. And I still have a few hanging backstage as well as people drop off panel or get booted from panel. We will, continue to rotate them in and out. I will establish some rules for the evening. You cannot boot off Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Marte, Mr. Soypill, or Mr. Ryan. I will also add in another veto for Andrew since he is also dual streaming and is a kind friend of the channel. Anyone else, shots can be fired. You can boot, do all you want. Otherwise, I leave the floor open if somebody wants to start with a question.
Cool. Hey, can we start by asking how much is a panel kick?
It's per minute. So starts at $5, 5 minutes.
Okay, cool.
100 is a full boot for the night.
Oh, 100? Okay, I'll send 200 to you right now. Kick, soy pill, and radical coder.
You can't.
Yes!
Nice try.
Okay, 300. I'll send you 300 right now. Kick them both.
It's their show, though. They're here for the show.
Bitter.
This is not
You know,
the
you
open
just
story, Andrew.
destroyed. You know,
Andrew-
you could have made $300 fucking dollars in
I'll
1
send you
minute. In 1 minute.
$100
Terrible. This is why
Andrew
women shouldn't
right
have
now.
fucking businesses, dude. Look at how they run their
How
fucking
embarrassed are
businesses.
you?
But I would
That didn't even
lose.
work.
I would lose more panelists in the future for future open.
I'm sorry,
panel.
Brian. Brian, did I say something absolutely fucking hilarious that obviously lightened the mood for everybody, and now you're seething about it because that's what you do?
Seem a little upset, dude.
I
Look,
don't
Sarah's
know.
sister,
Sarah,
he's
I don't
not
know. He
even
seems
doing
a
anything
little
now, all right?
seething. No, I mean, could you ever look
I'm
up that
freaking out.
stupid propeller hat? I don't know.
You think
I don't
I wear
know.
this? to
Yeah,
look
we're
cool?
seething.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you guys objectively got your asses stomped in that debate. Why did you take the debate
Watch
without reading the
Watch this, look
prompt
at this.
anyway?
Look at that.
Oh wow, gee, you got me with that one. You opened an already open jar. Ooh, whoa, you got me with that.
The twisty one, even.
Yeah.
It is a
Twist
twisty one.
Yeah. When I'll just have to remember that you know, when I'm moving into my new mansion, all about how you open that jar. You're fucking awesome. So hey, but hey, hang on, but just
you're recreating.
but hang on, just real quick. I'm honestly curious. Why the fuck did you guys accept this debate? Why did you do that?
Oh, I honestly thought it was going to be a conversation about pro or anti-death penalty. I didn't think we'd be talking about, hey, if I threaten you with death, will you not do a thing? Because it's so obvious. It would be like, I couldn't believe someone would genuinely think that was the idea of the debate, but I guess it is. So.
Yeah, and I took it because all the research I did seems to affirm my position that there's no evidence that it is an effective deterrent for crime, and I think that's been shown over and over, and no one made a case that it was, or no, not a convincing one at least. So maybe Andrew's here to do that to back them up, but
I just don't understand. Like, it was obvious that they demonstrated it's a deterrent over and over again. You guys conceded that. It's just bizarre to me that you even took it.
Can you walk us through how exactly?
Because, as Soy Pill stated, if you're gonna die by doing ting, you don't do the ting. Therefore, it deters the ting. Pretty easy, Ryan. Can you follow that logic?
That follows for like castle doctrine and
that follows for like everything.
Right.
Are you okay, Brian? Let's just walk it through logically.
Well,
would you be more or less likely to do a thing if you were gonna fucking die?
I think I'd be equally less likely to do it if I was going to die or be locked in prison for the rest of my life.
Oh, really? So you think that if it was the case that, oh, you'll have a lightning bolt hit you in 20 years, or you'll have a lightning bolt hit you right this second, that you would be just as likely to do the thing as not do the thing?
So the lightning bolt's going to hit me, and I'm going to be locked in a cell for the rest of my life?
No, the lightning bolt hits you either way. No, it has nothing to do with a cell. It's just a lightning bolt.
Die today or die in 20 years.
Yeah, die today or die in 20 years. You're saying that you would equally, both choices would be equally fucking appealing to you, Ryan? Really?
Life in prison and dying.
That's not what I asked you, Ryan. What I asked you is that if you could get hit, with a lightning bolt right now, or get hit with a lightning bolt in 20 years, which thing would you choose?
Andrew, I think
I get to live outside. I get to live my life otherwise, then I would take.
No, you're in prison. That's the point, Ryan, of the hypothetical. But Andrew, to his point,
but he doesn't seem to
his point. If you look at the societies that don't have the insta kill you, they still have very low rates of crime, and then that's when Rachel brought in the cohesion argument, which is a completely different thing. But like the death penalty seems to not be necessary to have these lower rates of crime, the decline of crime over time. So,
like, which culture are you talking about?
Like any of the ones I mentioned, like Canada, like Norway, like Ireland, like.
So you're saying that that Canadian crime doesn't decrease due to the fact that there's a death penalty?
Well, Canada, I don't think has a death penalty since what 70 something. 76,
Sure.
right?
But if the
but
crime,
they still have decreasing crime.
Yeah. Well, they also have a if I remember correctly, the crime has been decreasing basically everywhere in the West.
Yeah.
Right. Like basically everywhere it's been decreasing.
Right.
What we would have to do is evaluate whether or not it's decreasing more because there's a death penalty or not. And that seems to be that seems to be the trend that we would be following, and it would appear the evidence on our side there. Now, what's really funny about this, I'm not even a death penalty advocate, right? Never have been. Never. Yeah, never. I mean, I'm a Christian. I want to reform people. I think it's better to lock them in a fucking cell for 30 years and try to reform them, right? That's my ethical purview. But
Andrew,
as the church has stated, there's going to be nations where they implement the death penalty. They're not going to go against it because there are people who are not reformable, And a bullet between the eyes seems to take care of that problem.
In fact, there's some people that are so depraved that allowing them to live and continue to descend further into the depravity and commit more and more sin is actually like worse for their soul, according to the church. So we try to reform people, but there's a line there.
I'm a pro reformers too, and I honestly do agree that there are people that are so depraved that, like, again, I would argue probably deserve to die. The question is, does this materially help, and does this make society better? And that's what I came here to talk about.
You know what? Let me ask you this, though, Soy. You know who? Not Jeffrey Dahmer. Who was the other fucking Ted Bundy?
Ted Bundy.
Yeah. He was pulled over by a cop. I was reading a book where they got the cop's account, and the cop let him go because he was charismatic and this and that. And he went on the next week. He broke into a little co-ed house and he beat 4 of them to death. Right. And they said, "What's your biggest regret in life?" He said that when I pulled that car over, I didn't pull out my sidearm and shoot this guy while he was in the driver's side. Right. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that is got to be the worst, most torturous thing that's ever happened to a human. Absolutely. To note that they had the power to just end this right then and there. And I would basically hold myself responsible like the cop did, even though I would agree he didn't actually do anything wrong, right?
Right. You would feel guilt the rest of your life.
Of course. And that's totally reasonable. But I'm just asking this. Isn't it the case, though, that you would prefer to have men like that who would, if they could have the foresight that you're just a really bad guy, you know what I mean? And you just got dropped. Is that really going to make for a worse society? Is that really going to be bad for society ultimately?
Just had the cop just gotten a vibe, like any cop that gets a bad vibe just kills people. Like,
no. But if you're in a society where you can see the depravity of a person based on the patterns of behavior, like Ted Bundy, for instance, right? If they had just taken him outside and shot him in the head, would society really be worse off for that?
Yes,
I don't think it would.
Because you'd have a lot of Ted Bundys as cops.
Wait, hold on, Powder, let me answer. The problem is if we had captured Ted Bundy and we had known and seen this pattern of crime and said, all right, you're going to prison the rest of your life and you can never hurt a human being again, I think it would have...
they put him in prison. They were going to put him in prison for the rest of his life. He opened up a window, he escaped, and he killed 4 more co-eds.
All right, well, we should have better prison windows.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is this is my point, right? It's like, that's what they were going to do. It didn't fucking deter him. He went out and killed more people, dude.
He never made it.
With the death penalty, I guess probably wouldn't have deterred him either. He would have
the death penalty would have deterred him because he would have been fucking dead.
No, that wouldn't.
He would have been dead.
Though, right? That's a punishment, and we're killing him. We're taking him out, right? So in the same way that if this had been an effective life imprisonment, that wouldn't have deterred him. It would have just prevented him from harming any more people, right? And also,
which was the goal. That's the goal, right?
Exactly right. And I think that you can lock people up for the rest of their life and probably stop them from ever hurting anyone again.
Except they escape and kill people.
What about torture?
I think that's or they murder more people than inmates.
Yeah, they kill people. Yeah, they kill people in prisons. They grape the prison guards because you guys want to have co-ed prisons, right? Leftists want to have co-ed prisons.
I don't want that. I don't.
Yeah, you do. You don't care if there's female prison guards. You don't give a shit.
No, I truly do. You don't have to project that onto me.
Yeah, come on, you do. So you don't think women should be allowed to work in prisons?
Not in prisons where the people that are in the prison are going to be stronger than them on average.
Fucking based. So you're not for this gender equality shit. Love it.
If that's gender equality, I guess not. But I think that they should have the opportunity to have those jobs if they don't.
Well, then what the fuck are you talking about? They want the opportunity to have those jobs, but I don't want them in those jobs. Okay, genius, big brain take there, bro.
Perform the jobs. I don't think they should fucking do it, and most women can't, unfortunately, wrestle a fucking grown man to the ground. So yeah, they shouldn't be prison guards in men's prisons.
Yeah, so then, I mean, why even give them the opportunity to? It's just a terrible fucking idea.
If one of them can, they should be able to do it. Absolutely.
Yeah, but you see what I mean? It's like you talk out of both sides of your mouth. You're like, no, they shouldn't be able to do it unless they can do it, and then they should be able to.
Look, not a single woman has become a Navy SEAL, right? But if somehow she was able to pass all those things, do I think she should be able to? Yeah. Why?
It's still a terrible idea. Like even in the prison guard example, let's say she could. Who cares?
Actually, no, hold on. There's an argument against co-ed units and how it actually does diminish the.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing.
Okay, for sure.
But hang on. But it's the same thing in prisons. It's still going to be a terrible idea. And it's not only that. They always lower the fucking standards, dude. They always have to lower the standards for these fucking people.
If they do have to lower the standards, I don't agree with it. That's my opinion.
But even if they didn't, it still would be a terrible idea to have female prison guards in men prison. It still would be a terrible idea.
There's also a good argument there to how it's going to make them want to rape more. So there's a fair argument there too.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, when I look at this, right, it seems to me like you guys kind of talk out of both sides of your mouth. You understand it's super effective. You get that the death penalty is super effective. Your issue is just in being able to cleanly implement it, but it is ultimately a deterrent. I don't even think that is what's in question. It's just what the efficacy of the deterrent is.
In a vacuum, it's a deterrent. Relatively, it's not a deterrent.
I don't think anybody's demonstrated that it's a deterrent.
I mean, okay, well, Brian,
Ryan would rather get death than life.
I think their best argument.
Oh my God, that's so terrible.
We have demonstrated that it's a deterrent. You've even conceded this, Soy Pill.
Yeah, that one. I think that is a very good.
Well, can I ask then? Can I ask a question to the panel? Would we want to live in a society necessarily where we're always walking on eggshells per se? If everything's to an extreme deterrent as such.
Well, Ryan, let me just ask you this, okay? You're a crook. You've got three houses.
I am not.
You got 3 houses to break into, right?
Andrew, is he a crook?
Yeah, he's a crook. So anyway, he has got 3 different houses to break into, right? The first one has a woman who lives by herself. The second one, it's a husband and a wife. The third one's a husband and a wife, and they both have guns. So you, like most crooks, you case the joint. You realize, this is a situation. All 3 houses. Which one would you be the most likely to break into?
So it sounds like you're again conflating. I have said over and over that I think castle doctrine and
can you answer the question though?
I'll get to it. Why don't you calm down, both of you? I've said over and over that I don't
care about speech, Ryan. Can you just answer the fucking question, bro?
Well, I will. You don't have to care about the speech. I'm one of the.
If you can answer the question, then give the qualifier, Ryan. That's the right way to do it.
I don't have to do it that way.
Oh my God, you're such a dude. You're such a woman about this shit. Just answer the.
How about just return based on?
It wouldn't have taken this long if you would have just let me answer it, like instead of interrupting 5 times. You fucking. But what I was saying is that I've said over and over that I support castle doctrine laws, I support self-defense laws, and so I think I would be more deterred from going into the house that is likely to shoot me. Right?
Why?
Because I'm gonna get killed instantly.
Right. So then, would that be akin to a penalty of death?
Well, no, because that's not how the death penalty works.
Well, no, it is listen. Is that a penalty that has happened to you for your actions that results in your fucking death?
Yeah, you're just equivocating between.
No, that's not equivocation.
The reason,
it is.
Not wrong.
No, it's not equivocation.
Ryan, would you rather die immediately or get tortured for the rest of your life?
No, it's exactly. It's
like die immediately.
You want to walk or jump out of a plane without a parachute. It's like, oh well, obviously you don't want to do one of these things. This thing is worse. It's like, yeah, but the problem is you have to show me that it is better if every single person does this. If every single person is threatened by.
Why would I have to show you it's better that everybody does it?
The point is, are you able to show that the death penalty is such an effective deterrent that we should be implementing?
You just did. It's just logically follows that if you're afraid to die, right, when you take X action, in this case the crime, which is breaking into somebody's house, that the penalty of death is clearly the deterrent here.
Right. So, Andrew, let's break it to the absurd example. Like, if you stole a candy bar and punishable by death, would fewer people steal candy bars? Obviously,
yes.
Right? You would agree. Yeah. Obviously, this is obvious. The question is, in a society, if we started to implement this, what happens, right?
Let me tell you, I have the perfect society to point to.
Be, murdered because it's like, hey, that guy.
Yeah, actually, hang on. I have the perfect society that I can point to.
Sure.
Have you ever heard of Vlad the Impaler?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Vlad, I just want to point out that there was a very famous letter. I was actually pulling it up during the debate. I remembered it kind of briefly in the back of my head, but I pulled it up, and it was a letter which was going back. I believe it was to a Roman Catholic church from an observer who was there. He was walking down the road, and he noticed that there was gold all over the place, right out in the open. Now, at this time, when you got peasants all over the place, having gold out in the open was like. You never saw that anywhere, ever, unless there was guards all over the place and shit like that. And he said, how's this possible? How do you have such a society where you can have just gold all over the streets? And he said, basically, come here. And they walked him out, and they showed him an entire field full of people who had been fucking impaled. And they impaled him through the ass, and it went all the way through the ass and up through the chest. And guess what? Nobody stole fucking nothing, ever. They didn't steal shit. Now, he said that at least from his perspective, he said that he thought that the society there was actually fairly well adjusted. People were pretty nice to each other, this type of thing. He was just shocked and stunned that you could have gold in the street. It's like, from my view, that doesn't seem that shocking or stunning. Yeah, if you're going to fucking get impaled for stealing shit, you're not going to fucking steal shit. So if you say, what about the death penalty for a Snickers bar? Well, if you're in a person's place of business and you're stealing from them, you're stealing their livelihood, and they blow your fucking head off, I don't give a fuck. Like, I literally don't give a fuck. In fact, I guarantee you that's going to lead overall to less crime.
No,
And
I agree. If everyone got shot
Yeah.
for stealing a Snickers bar, crime would go down. My question is, first of all, I don't think the punishment for stealing a Snickers bar.
Oh, come on, dude. What about all these like flash robberies? You can make the same argument, right?
Wait. Like, I know people who were like very good people that when they were 12 were like, damn, I want a Snickers bar, I don't have money, and they stole. And that's bad, right? I don't like that. I don't think they should be gunned down in the store, right? And I think that you would agree that these people can at the very least become better people, and I don't want to like be killing everything.
Yeah. So this would be the same thing if like a 10-year-old breaks into your house, right? You make the contention of agency, and I think that that's fine, right? I would even be willing to do that. But if you take a look at what happened in California with flash mobs, I was talking to a gun store owner when I was in California. Now, this is anecdotal, but it follows, okay? I said, why is it that Santa Barbara, California, of all places, most of the people I'm talking to sound like they're way more conservative than liberal? And he was like, actually, in the recent votes, we saw this come up, and here's what happened. Store owners were just sick of having to fucking lock everything up. They were sick of having to lock up fucking everything because these flash mobs would come in, clean them out. They weren't even allowed to do a thing about it. Now, let me ask you this. Is it preferable to have the society where flash mobs can come in and clean your entire business out? Or is it preferable to have a society where they try to do that, you open fire, a couple of them die, and it never fucking happens again?
So in that dichotomy, obviously the second one. However, the reason that's happening now is because of the stupid California laws that say, hey, you can't even pursue someone unless they steal up to X amount of money, which is ridiculous and I think is stupid. And the easy answer is, so
what's the threshold we put a person's life at if it's not 50 cents?
Well, we don't
$10,
we don't have
$200.
You have to threaten them with death to have these things go away. The reason they spiked during that time was because they got rid of those restrictions and cops weren't pursuing them. And as soon as cops start enforcing the law,
well, I mean, I actually answered my question. It should, if somebody steals $1,000 TV from your business, should you be able to open fire?
If they're in the process of it, I could see a very good argument for it.
Okay, so then the only difference between my view of the Snickers bar and your view of the TV is that you think a person's life is worth $1,000 and I think it's worth 50 cents. So what? Like, so fucking what then? So what?
Someone broke into my house and I don't know what they're going to steal. I don't really have a lot of things worth money. They could steal like a 10-cent cat toy. I'd probably blow them away just because I'm scared for my fucking life. I'm like, get the fuck out of my house. You violated my sanctity. And I said early in this debate, someone stole my bike. I watched it on video. That bike, it was the bike tire even, probably worth $15. I wanted to fucking murder that guy, right?
Yeah, but why is it? Why
live in a society where we kill people?
But bro, here's the thing. Yeah. I mean, you kind of do. Like, if a person breaks into your house and he's going to steal things, and you don't actually feel like your life is threatened, he's just in there cleaning your shit out. He's going to steal your life savings. Maybe you have it in a jar on top of your fridge.
Right. Even
so what?
I'd probably blow him away.
Yeah, of course, of course. And how is that going to make for a worse society?
Why stop there? Why not get in front of it and just snap them all first?
I would disagree that might actually make people better. However, if you can't, you would have to prove that your life was in danger in our current legal system. And I think, unfortunately, there could be some cases, and this might lead to an increase of this, where if you could just kill someone for whatever reason, you could now kill innocent people by saying, oh, actually, he was just in my house and I didn't invite him in, which is why you're not allowed to invite someone in.
Yeah, but what about the fact that, honestly, since most of this stuff is based around that I felt like my life was in danger, right? Come on, like in stand your ground states, they're fucking killing people over property getting stolen, and then they say I felt like my life was in danger when it wasn't. It's an ultimate cop out. You could just remove that. You could just remove that whole stage of it and be like, look, you're trying to jack somebody's shit and you got your ass shot off. And people would be like, that's right. Don't fucking steal shit. You won't get your ass shot off. It sounds like a way better society to me.
But I don't disagree.
You have to have a trial to determine that's actually what happened.
Blowing them the fuck away, Andrew. If you want to, 100%. Like, I would probably blow these people away too.
Yes, exactly. There we go.
And allow
Death
me
penalty.
to interrupt for just a moment, gentlemen, if you don't mind. Vorden with the Big Ten says soy pill due process is innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. You dolt.
Did I say something to the contrary of that?
I think maybe with the example earlier of if they're in your house and so on and so forth. This was right before closing statements. So I think it may be I don't know, due process.
Yeah. Well, if in that specific scenario, again, if it's like even though I think the punishment for stealing out of my house shouldn't be death in and of itself, if I catch you in the act of it and I'm like, hey, motherfucker, like you're in my space. I don't know what the fuck you're here to do. I don't give a shit what you're trying to do. I'm going to kill you. I think that's very different from I'm not there. He gets away with it somehow. And then they catch him later and he has my fucking iPhone or whatever.
Yeah. Well, if they chop their fucking hands off, you think they'd never steal again?
No, probably not.
Yeah, no, probably not.
However, I don't want to live in a world where people who get accused of
I
it.
do. You know what though? I kind of do. I want to live in a society where I know you're a fucking thief because I could just look at you and see that you don't have one of your fucking hands and be like, well, you're probably not very trustworthy, are you? Or
Andrew,
I would think if they were like 50, I would think now maybe
if you're accused of being a thief, that you would lose your hands. That sounds a lot more like the society you're arguing for. Just being accused.
No. You could be tried, convicted, and then have your fucking hand cut off. And then after your fucking hand is cut off, we can just be like, hey, look, now you're marked for all of society. We know. We're like, don't do business with that guy. You know why? Because he's a convicted thief, and we know this because he got his fucking hand cut off. Or alternatively,
otherwise become better people, right? Like
they would become better people.
Well, yeah,
I would
like,
feel bad for those
they're gonna
who
be
are
stupid for the rest of their
actual
life and won't be able to
amputees.
participate in the same way you or I would, and they're now completely debilitated. Like, I think that someone who steals doesn't deserve to have the rest of their life ruined for it. I think they should be.
All right, how about a couple of fingers? You'll
think
be all right. You'll be all right with a couple of fingers.
Right now for thievery is actually pretty good, except for in
No,
California.
it's not good, dude. It's not good.
Let me concede. In California, it is fucking bullshit the way they let people get away with it. I actually really am upset today. I went to go buy some fucking skincare bullshit, and they had to fucking press a button and wait for some.
Yeah, and it was all locked up, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Now let me tell you something. One fucking soy jack like you, if you just opened up a business, and then when they came in and they tried to flash mob you out, if you just fucking opened up, you know what I mean, and just did away with these fucks, you know how much you would actually save people in anguish and heartache and everything else because one guy wouldn't put up with it. In fact, there used to be a guy who was there. I think he did watches, and I think he's killed like six different people during six different, I don't remember, what's this guy's name? Chat can remind me, but they'd come in to rob him, right? He'd blow their ass away. And then 2 years later, another one coming to rob him, blow their fucking ass away, right? And he was totally unapologetic about it. He'd go on the news and they'd be like,
was from India that beat the shit out of the guy that was trying to steal from him.
Those two guys with the brooms, is that what you're talking about?
That is exactly what we need to do.
Well,
that would bring commerce to a screeching
halt. And I know, by the way, I know exactly
whoever they wanted in their store.
I know exactly how much a finger is worth. A finger is worth $10,000, and here's how I know that: because the industry standard in every factory you work in, if you lose a fucking finger, they give you $10,000, right? That seems to be the agreed upon price. So it's like, okay, fucker, you stole it up to $10,000. We're cutting one of your fucking fingers off. That seems totally reasonable to me.
See, that's more reasonable than killing someone for taking a sticker.
The pinky is worth $10,000. The thumb is worth $25,000.
Yeah, the thumb is worth $25,000. That's true. You do need your thumb to do manual labor.
What's this one worth? I want to ask the soy pill how many steps in your skincare regimen, sir?
How many steps? Oh man, they're very bad. I just got into it. I need to date a beautiful skinned woman because right now I like put some lotion on my face. Maybe sometimes I'll do like a hydrating thing. It's nothing. It's 1 or 2 steps. It's awful. If you have Rachel, I'll take it.
Andrew washes his face with the same bar soap he probably washes his balls with, and look at that face. Look at that adorable chin. Look at that cute.
And then Rachel, and then you kiss him after that, and then you
get a thumb. Andrew kind of looks like a thumb right now.
You know.
Look at him, he's gorgeous. No skincare regimen, no multi-step skincare regimen, and look at him. He's beautiful.
Put you two next to each other. Sorry, Marte. I'm going to put you down to the bottom so she can admire her husband.
You need to throw some hair back. The clean shaven is freaking me out. You
I do agree.
You always have the same facial hair.
Make the beard great again. Run for Rage in with the Big Ten.
No. There was a great joke. Hang on. There was a great joke there. Before you read that super chat, the joke that I made was because I couldn't open that jar. My beard woke me up and said it was moving away. Okay, it said it's done. It said it was done with me. It's packed its fucking bags up and it fucking left until there is redemption for me when I'm in a debate and I don't have to open a fucking greasy jar. So that was the parallel there is that the beard packed itself. It's packed its bags and it left.
All of them.
Real quick, he must have had a really oily hand.
I think
for the record, backstage, I still have Duck, I have George, I have Herbert, also known as Wi-Fi Gospel. I have Joe Cool, and I have Hornet, Avoided Hornet, hanging out backstage in that order. If you want to bring them back up, you have to boot somebody in order to do so. Wrongful Raging with the Big Ten says Vlad impaled his own countrymen around his castle. When the Turks saw it, they retreated.
True.
Yep. And I want to say this, which is like, I'm sympathetic to this argument as someone who has had crimes committed against me. And I'm in California. I see a lot of bullshit. All right. When people do things I don't want, even when people don't put the fucking shopping cart back, I'm like, these people need to be shamed and ostracized. Wait, Daniel, let me finish and I'll let you respond because I actually do like hearing from you. But yeah, like these crimes fucking piss me off. And there is a hypothetical world where if we just killed everyone who like did any sort of transgression against me, it would be a better place for at least me if theoretically no innocent people got hurt in this. And the problem is inevitably you're going to get it wrong sometimes. And I think that the crime shouldn't be so, punishable by death when it's something so light like stealing a Snickers bar, because I do think those people can be better people. But two, you're never going to get this right 100% of the time. And sometimes someone picks up a Snickers bar and they walk past the cash register to get the gum and you fucking blow their head off. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to live in a world where we kill people for that either. However, I think with some of the examples, Andrew, that you're bringing up, like guy in my fucking house, like ruffling through my fucking jewelry store, yeah, blow them the fuck away. They're very obvious examples. And there's very like, hey, I don't know examples. And that's why I'm happy the justice system says, let's make sure that we're punishing people the right way, even though they get it wrong. I'd rather them get it wrong a little bit than people get it wrong
but
killing 1 in 8 people.
But hang on, there's one concession there that I kind of need you to make, which is that knowing how it is in California when you got to push a button next to a fucking, next to a thing, right?
If you lived in and they would open it immediately, I would do that.
Yeah, if it is the case that I can show you like that is not the case in Midwestern states because you have the right.
I'm aware.
Yeah, you have the right to defend your business. Well, you have the right to do that.
No reason, right? Because it didn't used to be this way in California. They didn't have that right. However, they did go after people for these like little misdemeanor like things, and then they stopped. And that's
it's been like that in California since I was a kid.
No, it really
under Gray. Listen. This shit started under Gray Davis, dude. When I was a kid,
I believe that it's happened before, but like as someone who's lived here my whole life, and I'm seeing it escalate specifically in 2020 and onward, like it absolutely is as bad as it is.
Bro, I grew up in Northern California. I was there. I was there for years.
I'm in the Bay Area, and
I was in the Bay Area too.
Sorry, Andrew, the Bay Area gets the most crime. All right, we are the highest crime.
Yeah, and listen, it was like that. Not only there, it was like that in Southern California as well, in especially around the Morongo Valley, right? The thing is like, look, it has been this way for a long time because in the Midwestern areas where people are armed, they have guns, shotguns in their gas stations, things like that. You don't fuck around because you get your ass shot off. And guess what? When I walk in there to get my fucking skincare shit, I don't got to push a fucking button. I walk in and I say, I'll take that, and I'll take. You know what else is crazy? Like if I go in to get liquor, I just get the liquor. Isn't that wild? Nothing is locked up. Everything is right out on fucking display. It's fantastic. That's a way better society, dude. Way better society. And you know what? The shopkeepers are way more likely to be friendly to you. Right? Everything seems to be, pretty kosher there because they think in their head, if you fuck around in here, I'm going to blow your fucking skull off. And it's like, well, that kind of makes sense, right?
That'd be a good way to set up.
I want to say one thing
to rob people, right?
I need to address this.
You could pop up in a liquor store.
Hold on. Dusty was adding in a thought too.
I assume you can blow these people away, right? Like,
wait, what?
States, I don't know. In states like Kansas, Texas, like these are places with the like top 10 like highest larceny.
But only in the major metropolitan areas, and usually it's in the high crime minority communities. Especially in Kansas. Like Kansas is really big in the you just went to the wrong side of the tracks. I remember one time I was in Kansas, I went through on a bus ride, and I was walking from the bus station across the street, right? To I don't remember, it was like to a little restaurant or something. This fucking piece of shit car came flying up, stops next to me, 2 undercover cops like, do not cross the street, sir. I was like, are you fucking serious? He said, do not cross the street, sir. He's like, order food, whatever it is you need to do, stay in that fucking bus depot. I was like, okay, man, no problem.
Was it?
So I was
in the cities. Do they still have the like you can blow people away in your store for stealing, or do they not have that rule?
Well, no, that's the problem, right? Most of these cities are run by progressives, and they actually make examples of people because what happens is leftist lynch mobs get together, and they're like, my God, you killed this poor guy who stabbed the dude in the chest 50 times. I can't fucking believe that you did that. oh my God. And then they start fucking rioting and causing all sorts of problems. So it's like, no, you can be made an example of by these leftist DAs, these leftist district attorneys inside these major metropolitan areas. It happens constantly. But what's really funny, you go 50 miles outside the major city, and what happens? You can buy whatever the fuck you want. Nothing's locked up. It's a fucking free for. You don't even have to lock your fucking doors. Why? Because it's like a trap, right? You come in here, it's like a roach motel. You come in, you don't fucking leave. That's how it fucking works, right? You come in, you don't leave. It's like, how is that not preferable, dude?
Well, like I said, in certain cases for thievery, I'm totally sympathetic to blowing people away. I just don't think you should blow everyone away, because I think there are plenty of people who steal very small, insignificant things that should be punished, that should be encouraged to stop. However, I don't think they deserve to die for it.
Look,
sorry.
even
listen, we're not going
if
for it.
we add up, like let's say even if it's just a candy bar, right? But everyone around the world goes and steals a candy bar. Like that one little insignificant thing adds up very quickly to where it then like it seems silly, but it
all
adds
of those
up.
people, that adds up more.
But if we killed the first 10, if we
trolley
killed the first
problem
10,
one innocent little
Being
trolley
the
boy,
dynamic,
hold
10
on.
million
If we
candy
killed-
bars, I'd pick the boy to not die.
If we killed
okay?
the first 10 after they did it, then there probably won't
Well,
be
it's
any
the
more
problem
after
is that here's what the lawyers will argue. They'll be like, if you just the same way that I did with you, if it's $10,000 or 50 cents, why is this a difference on a person's life? And this is what they'll argue in court. You know what I mean? So what happens is you take away people's ability to defend themselves and their businesses, and that's the problem. That's why if you go into a major metropolitan area, right, you walk in and it's fucking everything's behind glass. You can't touch anything, nothing. You will literally 30 miles west, and now you can do whatever you want.
It's not just because of the death, right? Because in California, you'll see this. What they stopped, or that they implemented this law, which I think is bullshit, is that the people, the security guards there, or the employees aren't allowed to stop them. And that's sometimes actually because of the private institution that says you're going to cost us more, like liability in a lawsuit than we will from the like 10 cents of the shit. And wait, hold on, let me finish. I think that's fucking stupid.
Well, that's because of the loss in California again, though.
Right, again, and yeah, hold on. I'm giving you ground to the Republican
Yeah.
argument here. I think you should be able to beat the shit out of shoplifters, right? I think you should be able to physically stop them. But that's such a far cry away from murdering them on site that I think that also is a deterrent, because people also are like, wait a minute, I don't want that fucking 400-pound security guard next to the metal detector to beat the fuck out of me. And I think he should be able to if you're walking out with a bunch of shit you stole. And if they get it wrong, they're still alive.
Do you know why? Hang on, Soy Pill. Do you know why it was?
I've been very quiet for a while.
Hang on, we're almost done, and then I'll cede the floor, Ryan. I promise.
Stop the shoplifter.
But yeah, let me just say this one thing, and then I'll cede the floor.
If somebody stops a shoplifter,
David, Daniel, hang on.
Yeah, just one thing. I'll cede the floor. So, do you know why it is, Soy Pill, that it used to be in Western towns that bank robberies would brazenly happen in broad fucking daylight? Why that was the case? Why like the James Younger gang and guys like this and Bonnie and Clyde would be able to get out with just so much fucking money? It's because all of that money is insured, right? It was all insured. And the reason it was insured is because banks went to the government and said, we're not going to loan you any more fucking money unless you insure this if it gets stolen, right? We want you to pay for our losses. And the government was like, well, fine, I guess we'll fucking do that, right? Well, the side effect is that the banks instituted a policy where it was like for their employees, if somebody comes in and robs you, who gives a shit? It ain't our fucking money. Don't do anything, right? So these guys were brazenly able to just rob them fucking blind. And so here's what happened. An interesting thing happened, right? Private banks, which began to open out west, right, who couldn't get any of that insurance money from the government. When these fucking gangs would come in, guess what they instructed their security guards to do?
Shoot them.
Blow their fucking asses away. And guess what happened? All of these fucking criminal gangs that were running around, right, started getting their fucking asses shot off, and bank robberies started to go out by the wayside, right? Same thing you'll see when the FBI started going after Bonnie and Clyde and things like this. You started to see a shift in policy for defense, which used to be retreat first, fight later. Then it became stand your ground. Every place stand your ground's put in place, every place where people are allowed to defend their property seems to be a much better fucking place.
Right.
Okay,
so
this
Andrew,
leads
again,
perfectly into what I was going to say, and then I want to let Daniel.
Andrew, again,
respond
look,
to.
it's like, yeah, obviously, if they the option is do absolutely nothing because your stuff is insured, or blow them the fuck away, that's going to reduce the crime, definitely. The problem is if you do this for shoplifting, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but you walk through the metal detector and it beeps because it's like, ah, fuck, like this thing didn't get scanned properly, and then the security guard whips out his gun and blows your fucking head off. Like, I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to live in a world where the mistakes cause people to die. I just want to live in a world where the crime goes down. I think there's plenty of ways to do that that don't involve blowing them
promise I'm going to let you go,
But
Daniel.
I will say,
just
obviously,
Hold
if the
on,
punishment
hold on,
for all these
hold on.
crimes is death, yeah, the crime's going to go down. This is just like apparent. You're not wrong.
I'm
But
saying
what
one
if
paragraph
it's
and then I'm done. And then
really
Daniel,
hard?
it's all yours. I promise. I promise.
Go
it's
ahead,
yours.
Ryan.
Hold
I-
on, Ryan.
Hold on, Daniel. He's one of the main panelists. It's his floor.
All right.
So I
Go
just wanted
ahead,
to defend
Ryan.
because earlier I accused Andrew of equivocating, and I just wanted to defend this. So I wanted to get my thoughts together, and I did. So using castle doctrine or self-defense laws to prove the death penalty deters crime is equivocation because it confuses two very different types of deterrence.
That's not what equivocation
You
means.
just said one paragraph. You started
It
a
is
whole new
actually.
discussion.
No, it's not.
I'm
Equivocation is using ambiguity in language.
After Daniel responds, you can go. Okay, you can chill, Andrew. So self-defense
dude.
laws work because they're immediate and certain, while the death penalty is delayed and rare. You can compare them, but you can't treat them as the same kind of deterrent. Go ahead, Daniel.
Flag.
Yeah,
on the
so
flag.
hang on. Since you can't cowardly be like, oh, I'm going to call you out for this, but you can't respond.
I wasn't.
So-
I was actually defending something I said earlier that you.
Yeah, that's
called me out
great,
for,
but
and
here's
I
the
followed
thing,
up.
right?
Let's let Daniel go. And then
It's
you
the
can come
term
back.
or equivocation means a term or phrase which has multiple meanings. It's using ambiguity of language. You could say that I was making a false comparison or a false dichotomy.
accused me of equivocating.
Dude, can you chill out? No, the opposite
I'm
is
sorry.
true.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
You
No,
accused
that's
me
great.
of equivocation. That
I
means
accused you.
ambiguity in language.
That's what I meant to say.
No, that's ambiguity in language. How was I using ambiguity in language?
You are using. Okay, so what you're doing is you're conflating the death penalty with castle.
That's
doctrine.
not equivocation. That would be some other fallacy. That's not that. Okay, read the definition of equivocation, please.
Yeah, let's do it.
Do it.
Equivocation. The use of ambiguous language.
Ryan. Oh, the use of ambiguous language. I didn't use ambiguous.
Using ambiguous
What language did I use which was ambiguous?
So you were using you're conflating the two terms, right?
No, I wasn't conflating any terms.
Well, you are because you're using the idea of castle doctrine and self-defense laws, and you're using that as the idea.
You can say that that's a false comparison or it's not analogous. You just can't say it's equivocation.
I think I can say it. You might not like it, but
Well, that's because it's you're if you're going to use fallacies, just use them correctly. Is all I'm asking. Just use the fallacy correctly. There's no Ryan. There's no equivocation. You could use some other fallacy. It's just not that one.
There is. I think the thing being equivocated are these two different
No.
concepts.
Like equivocation would be if you're having a trans debate, for instance, and you're talking about sex when you actually mean gender, or gender when you're actually meaning sex, because you know that these have vague meanings. So you're switching between the two. That would be equivocation, right? Me saying that a deterrent of death, right, tends to work, whether it's by the state or not by the state. You could say that that's not analogous, but I'm not equivocating about terms. We know what death means here, right? We both know what death means, right?
By trying to use the argument that self-defense and castle doctrine laws do deter crime, which I agree
They do.
with.
Yeah.
You're equivocating on the death penalty term.
No. What I was doing was drawing an analogy on deterrence itself and death. I'm not saying that the like term death penalty from the position of the state is gonna equal the same thing. So you could say that's not analogous. You can say that, but you can't say that I'm equivocating. What's the equivocation?
The equivocation is between self-defense laws and.
Well, I'm not using ambiguous language for the demonstration here.
You are using ambiguous.
Okay, which word are you confused about? Death? Are we confused about death?
Not because I'm confused.
Well, then there's no ambiguity in the language.
The
Then
ambiguity lies within the way you're using the argument about self-defense laws. Like you're using.
That's not equivocation. That would be something else. False analogy, false dichotomy.
Well,
you could use all sorts of
things. It falls
things.
under the umbrella. But again, we can disagree on that. But I think it falls under it. You don't. Then I guess at the end of the day,
I'm just pointing this out. Like this will actually be helpful for you in the future. Like equivocation. Equivocation is the most common fallacy used in a debate. Equivocation is the most common.
And there are different kinds of equivocation.
Well, yeah, but that's true. You can equivocate in multiple ways, but it's always under the concept of ambiguous, non-definable language, which is then used to shift back and forth between positions. That's what an equivocation is. What we were doing was giving
was the use of ambiguous language to conceal the truth.
Yeah, so you're switching back. That's exactly right. So you're switching back and forth generally between positions, like you would. If I said,
you're switching back and forth between two different ideas to try to argue for one idea.
No. What language was ambiguous here?
I think that you're using the ambiguity between these two different things.
What language is ambiguous that I'm using?
You're using, so the ambiguity lies in you using the word death penalty, or you implying that death penalty is is described by both of these things. That's where the ambiguity is.
No, there's no ambiguity there, right?
Yes, there is ambiguity.
No. If I'm drawing a parallel between the comparison of death being a deterrence, right? Well, death penalty is using death as a deterrence. We agree with that, right?
Yes.
Okay, then there's no ambiguity here, Ryan.
Well, I think that I still think it is. I still think it's.
You still think it is anyway, even though I just demonstrated it's not, bro. You don't have to use fallacious. You don't have to use fallacies you don't understand. You don't need to do that.
Andrew, Ryan, I think the reason it's ambiguous is not just the way it's the way you're describing and saying, look, it is the exact same to punish someone by death when they're in your house and you shoot them as it is to punish someone with death by putting them through the legal system. These things are very not.
That wouldn't be equivocation, though. You could argue that there's some other false analogy or something, but that's not equivocating. What language is being used which is ambiguous
by
there?
calling them both death penalty or punished by death, right?
No, not if if the comparison is death as a deterrence, the state's going to issue death as a deterrence, or I'm drawing an analogy that death can be used in other ways as deterrence. If you can show me where I'm ambiguous with death, deterrence, anything like that, or using that language ambiguously, that would be equivocation.
One of them is stopping a crime and the other is a punishable thing after 30 years of going through.
That's not no, but the language is not ambiguous there. You would just have an issue with the comparison.
Okay, I guess it's semantics, but I really do think
semantics are super important. That's what equivocation is trying to do away with is semantic understandings, right? So the idea that if you're in a trans debate, for instance, this happens often, where people will equivocate in the ambiguity of the word sex or the ambiguity of the word gender in order to move between sex and gender to make their points, that would be equivocation.
But vaguely describing killing someone in your house as the death penalty, do you not think that is ambiguous as to what you mean by that when these things are very
No, not if we're talking about it in the context of a deterrence of death. It's deterrence of death from you, the person. By the way, we fleshed that entire idea out, and both of you agreed. You both agreed with these ideas that death can be a deterrence inside of the house. Death can be a deterrence from the state. That's the analogy that's being used. If I was using death ambiguously or something like that, that would be equivocation.
You're implying that means that the death penalty itself is also a deterrent, but it doesn't follow.
Well, that may not follow, but that still wouldn't be fucking equivocation, bro. Don't you get it? That's still not equivocation.
I think there's just different kinds of equivocation, and you're focused on one.
I know. There's the kind that is actually true, and then there's the kind that you fucking make up. I know.
Well, I mean,
there's two different types: the kind that there actually is, and then the kind that you fucking make up because you used it and you don't want to double down for reasons nobody understands.
I'm being a firearm instructor in English instructor. Let's teach everyone the meaning of the word.
Gentlemen.
Andrew's doing just fine.
I want
need my help.
This is true. I think you both stand your ground pretty well on your own. I want to go ahead and remind the chat over on my end that I am going to shut down the tomato side and we're moving over to the gauntlet. I've dropped the link in the chat several times. If you don't go ahead and just follow over through the link, the raid will send you regardless. So just stay tuned. I will be shutting that down here momentarily. Evan, I know you're a panel squatter, so I want to give you the opportunity to ask your question, and then we can bring somebody else up in your place since you're usually pretty quick. And Flow State, you're going to the back for 5.
All right. I think with the problem with the death penalty itself is there's a lot of places where there's a lot of people that don't believe in the state killing people or killing people in general. So they'll go and they'll willingly make a guilty person be innocent just so that they don't get that punishment. And I feel like the problem with that is with these cases where they're so few in number and they're more willing to let them go because of personal beliefs. I feel like it'd be better to just hit them with a lesser crime or give them a lobotomy or something where they will tolerate that more, but it's still something.
No idea what you're talking about, bro.
Yeah.
No idea what you're talking about.
I've been trying to follow it, and
what's your point?
All right. The death penalty is a problem because there are certain subsects of Christians that think the state cannot kill, or that.
How is it a problem?
Murderers or people who would be qualified for the death penalty. they'll
How
be
is that a
released.
problem? How is the death penalty a problem for people that actually deserve it?
I guess I don't have a problem with it personally, but I feel like it being applied locally, that's where people
you don't have a problem with it, but you're arguing it.
I just know like a lot of personal family members, like they're avidly against it to the point where they're willing to let a guilty person walk free to avoid them being killed.
They don't have the power to do that, though. Right?
You haven't explained it. How is the death penalty a problem for people that actually deserve it because they've done serious atrocities to the public? How is that a problem?
I guess I would say it causes like some societal dissent because of it. Because
sorry.
Sorry.
I couldn't help myself.
Rachel got me giggling.
I'm lost as well, Evan. Can we start it over again?
For like the case of a serial killer, there can be a lot of fear, and killing people is bad. And when they're getting put on trial and killed,
hold on, Daniel. I just told him to start over. What the fuck is wrong with you?
I'm sorry, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
God damn it, Daniel.
I may be a little too polite when it comes to if I hear someone talk, I stop. But when it comes to like a problem that I see is like people think murder is bad, and they see the government do it, like murdering a murderer, and it goes and it makes them outraged. And I think that the outrage against like the government is a problem, and that problem could be mitigated for punishments that are still severe.
That's what I hear. I hear.
So
he's saying words.
You're saying it has to do with like how we handle it with the government, like our outreach to the government in terms
How
of
the fuck am I the mean one? How am I the mean one? How is it fucking Andrew Wilson so mean? He's so fucking mean. It's like, fuck you people. Like, I'm the nicest person fucking ever, dude. Like, you fucking people. How am I the fucking mean one? All right, I'm getting another drink. This is ridiculous.
And a drink.
Thank you,
so,
Andrew.
Evan, I want to make sure so you're saying like that the outreach to the government is it not enough, or is it too much, or is it helping? Is it hurting?
I think the contention, like there's people that feel, I'd say the outrage from the general population about people getting, I'd say like the negative reaction to public executions or like or just executions generally by the government. That's the problem. And
you're saying you think that the general population probably doesn't agree with the death penalty, and we see that in the protesting and so on, or the appeals process towards a scheduled death, right? I think I'm catching what you're putting down here. So you're saying the outcries that say we don't want this should be enough for us to deter the death penalty based on the amount of protesting and people that don't agree with it, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I think that, obviously it varies state to state, but I think in essence, those states have voted in whether they want it or not. And that's what we've seen happen. That's why it's regulated to the states and allowed to the states, because we as an entire nation couldn't necessarily come to an agreement on that overall. And I think that if you put it back to the states and let them figure it out, then that general population has voted something in or will protest enough and lobby enough to vote it back out. So I don't know if it's necessarily an argument you're coming in with, or maybe just a thought process to that.
Yeah. I could definitely see where where I thought it was an argument, but I realized that it's not as solid to probably be vocalized. So thank you all for kind of like humoring me with that. And sorry if that was...
Sarah, I have an interesting thing here. And again, I don't really have a huge stake in this, but because especially when we talk about this, I don't even necessarily agree with Ryan in the long run. But I just looked up equivocation on like Grammarly, and so like the example they give is soil is natural. Natural things are good for you, so it's okay to ingest soil. AKA, if X is Y and Y is Z, then Z must be X. That's the fallacy. And I think what Ryan is saying you're doing, Andrew, is saying that castle doctrine results in death. The castle doctrine deters people, therefore death deters people. And because the death penalty is death, therefore it must be a deterrent. When it doesn't logically follow, you would have to show specifically that the death penalty deters.
No, that's incorrect. So
Before,
even
gentlemen, if I may, before Evan's going to say goodbye.
Well, bye, Evan.
Thank you,
Evan.
everyone.
Come on, Evan, you don't have to leave. Come on.
So what you're using is formal logic structure. The fallacy here would be in ambiguity, but the second you move into if X and Y or if Y then X, et cetera, you're leaving out the ambiguity position, and that's the position which is problematic. So in this case, what's ambiguous in the language there? What is the ambiguity portion?
It's just saying like they're the same because they're both death involved, right? That's the ambiguity. Even though you can explicitly
there's no ambiguity there.
What both of those is, the ambiguity is saying, well, even though there's a very specific different process in both of these things, they're the same because death. That's ambiguous.
No. There's no ambiguity.